Mrs. Ming was in the middle of her daily wholesome training routine when Jinkyu, our dumb, worthless dog, happened to pass by. As he watched her exercising, he could not help but admire her. He found himself thinking that, ever since he had started living in her house, there was one thing he had done every single day, and that was watching her. He desired not only her attention but also the incredible physical abilities she possessed. More than anything, he wanted her to eventually give herself over to him completely. As he continued watching her, he wondered how he was supposed to achieve that goal. In his mind, if he could not surpass her through physical strength, then he would have to overcome that disadvantage through sheer numbers. Fortunately for him, he possessed the unique ability to replicate himself. Ever since that fateful day when he had chosen that ability, a new clone of himself had appeared every night without fail. Today marked the 4th day since then, which meant that he now had a total of 4 clones. The thought filled him with confidence as he considered the possibilities that came with having multiple versions of himself. Later, while Mrs. Ming was asleep in her room, all 4 of Jinkyu's clones quietly made their way inside. Looking at her sleeping figure, he apologized softly, saying that he was sorry, but they wanted to carry out an endurance training session with her. At the same time, he found himself thinking that perhaps, by constantly surrounding her with himself and his clones over a long period of time, he might eventually succeed in making her surrender herself completely to him. Jinkyu Cho was a 20-year-old pacifist. He often thought about how much he disliked conflict and competition. Rather than seeking victory over others, he was someone who preferred relaxation, harmony, and peace. In his mind, he had not embraced pacifism because he was naturally weak, or because he had fallen behind others in conflicts and competitions. Instead, he believed that he had simply chosen not to devote himself to training and fighting, preferring to maintain a peaceful life whenever possible. One day, he was in the living room with another girl who was lying comfortably on the sofa. Without hesitation, she ordered him to bring her a cup of coffee as quickly as possible. Jinkyu did not see the task as an errand forced upon him. Instead, he convinced himself that it was merely a natural act of social bonding, something that a pacifist like himself should willingly engage in. After he brought her the coffee, however, she took a sip and immediately complained that it tasted terrible. Hearing her criticism, Jinkyu remained calm and reflected that it was not as though he had lost to women in terms of strength. The truth, according to him, was simply that he had no intention of fighting anyone. The girl was Hyun-ju, someone who seemed to believe that every problem in the world could be solved through brute force. In Jinkyu's eyes, she was practically a savage who did not belong in civilized society. He often thought that she resembled a gorilla more than an actual human being. Her aggressive nature had been the same ever since they were children. Growing up, people had always told him that men became stronger as they got older. Yet no matter how he looked at the situation, he could not imagine his relationship with Ah-hyun ever changing. It seemed likely that things between them would remain exactly the same forever. When the time came to attend college, Jinkyu viewed it as his only opportunity to finally escape from her. Unfortunately, fate had other plans, and the two of them ended up attending the same school. To make matters even worse, his parents left the country on a long-term business trip. Before leaving, they rented out their house and informed him that he would be joining the military soon anyway, so he should learn to manage things on his own. They pointed out that there was an empty room next door and told him to move into it. Jinkyu often reflected that this was how he had ended up in his current situation. As a result, he found himself constantly being nitpicked, ordered around, and criticized whenever Ah-hyun saw an opportunity. Nevertheless, he insisted that, as a pacifist, he would never retaliate. According to him, it was not because he lacked the ability to defeat her, rather it was because he consciously chose peace every single time. He even liked to imagine impossible scenarios. If some mysterious force suddenly granted him overwhelming power and made it easy for him to defeat Ah-hyun in any situation, he believed that he would still never seek revenge against her. Therefore, if anyone out there was considering granting him a supernatural ability, he hoped they would reconsider because he intended to uphold peace in every possible circumstance. One night, while he was sleeping in his bed, something unusual happened. As he lay there in the darkness, he called out for a status window. Before any status screen could appear, however, a mysterious voice suddenly spoke to him. The voice remarked that watching him sleep with such a dejected expression made it wonder whether he could truly remain a pacifist if he were given overwhelming power. Jinkyu was immediately startled. He wondered if he was dreaming and could not understand where the voice was coming from. The mysterious voice then instructed him to go ahead and choose the power he desired. Moments later, a status window appeared before him, displaying numerous options. Realizing that he was expected to select one of them, he carefully examined each choice. The first option offered him the ability to instantly teleport anywhere. Jinkyu admitted to himself that teleportation sounded useful, but he also thought that it would not really help him defeat Ah-hyun. He quickly reminded himself that defeating her was not his goal anyway, since he was supposedly a lover of peace. The second option granted control over fire. After considering it briefly, he concluded that burning Ah-hyun was definitely not an acceptable solution. The third option allowed him to maintain the physical condition of a 20-year-old and never experience age-related weakness. Jinkyu jokingly thought that perhaps when Ah-hyun eventually reached the age of 70, he might finally have a chance to match her strength while retaining the body of a young man. The fourth option granted the power to read minds. Once again, he dismissed it almost immediately. In his opinion, there was no need to read Ah-hyun's thoughts, because she was already incredibly easy to understand. He assumed that she was probably thinking of new ways to make his life miserable at any given moment. Finally, he came across the last option. This ability would make him twice as strong every single day. As he read the description, he realized that within only a few days he would become capable of surpassing Ah-hyun in every area imaginable. The possibility seemed incredibly impressive to him. Without putting much thought into the consequences, he selected that option. As soon as he made his choice, the mysterious voice spoke again. It commented that he had selected the dangerous power. The voice explained that every night at midnight, his strength would continue to increase dramatically. It then added that they would be watching to see whether he could truly handle the power he had chosen. With those words, the voice fell silent, leaving Jinkyu alone with the realization that his life might be about to change completely. The next morning, Jinkyu woke up and immediately found himself thinking about the strange power he had chosen the previous night. As soon as he opened his eyes, he wondered whether he had already become stronger. The mysterious voice had clearly told him that his power would continue to grow. With that thought in mind, he carefully looked over his body and paid attention to how he felt. However, despite his expectations, he could not sense anything unusual at all. The more he examined himself, the more convinced he became that nothing had changed. Just as he was beginning to doubt what had happened the previous night, he suddenly noticed another person standing in front of him. Startled by the unexpected sight, he immediately focused on the figure and realized that it was clone number 1. At the same time, the status window appeared before him and displayed information showing that he was currently in a normal state. As he stared at the familiar face, he finally understood why the person looked so familiar. The reason was obvious: it was his own clone. Looking back and forth between himself and the clone, Jinkyu began trying to understand the true nature of his ability. He thought that perhaps this was what the mysterious voice had meant when it said that his strength would double every day. Technically speaking, there were now 2 versions of him. In terms of numbers, that could certainly be considered double. Even so, the realization did not make him feel particularly excited. In his opinion, having another version of himself standing nearby did not truly feel like becoming stronger. It simply felt as though there were 2 weak people instead of 1. He could not help thinking that if he got into a fight, he would probably still lose despite having a clone helping him. Because of that, he became convinced that there had to be more to the ability than what he was currently seeing. Refusing to accept such a disappointing explanation, he decided to inspect the status window more carefully. Various statistics, attributes, and options appeared before him. As he looked through the information, he found himself wondering whether it was merely his imagination or whether his status was genuinely terrible. The numbers displayed on the screen seemed unimpressive to him, and he could not help feeling disappointed. Nevertheless, another possibility soon crossed his mind. If he continued receiving a new clone every night, then eventually he might be able to build an entire army of clones. The thought alone was enough to make him feel slightly better. Even if each clone was not particularly strong individually, an enormous number of them could still become useful someday. As he continued examining the status window, he noticed something unusual. Several options appeared disconnected from one another. Curious about what that meant, he began thinking through the possibilities. Eventually, he came to the conclusion that pain synchronization was not active by default. To test his theory, he interacted with the clone. Almost immediately, a notification appeared on the status window indicating that the clone had been attacked and that pain synchronization had been activated. The result shocked him. The moment the notification appeared, he could feel the same pain that the clone experienced. The sensation was real and impossible to ignore. Through that experiment, he quickly learned that once synchronization was activated, any pain experienced by one body could be shared by the other. Before he could spend much time analyzing that discovery, another notification suddenly appeared. This time, it was a quest. Jinkyu stared at the screen in confusion. He was not even sure whether the quest was supposed to be completed directly or indirectly. Nevertheless, the objective itself was displayed clearly enough. The task required him to perform a wrestling session. The moment he read the objective, his eyes widened in disbelief. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. In his mind, the quest made absolutely no sense whatsoever. He thought that whoever had created the system should at least have provided a task that an ordinary person could realistically complete. Whether the requirement was meant to be approached directly or indirectly, he could not imagine himself successfully accomplishing something like that. The objective felt completely unreasonable. While he was still staring at the screen and questioning his life choices, loud banging suddenly echoed through the house. The sound immediately pulled him out of his thoughts. Ah-hyun was standing outside his room, repeatedly pounding on the door while demanding that he come out and eat. Realizing that she was not going to stop anytime soon, Jinkyu eventually gave up and left his room. He joined everyone at the dining table and began eating breakfast. Even while eating, however, he could not stop thinking about the quest. His mind continuously returned to the objective. He considered whether using one of his clones might somehow help him complete it. However, after remembering the pain synchronization effect, he quickly became discouraged. If both he and the clone shared pain, then any difficult training would effectively feel twice as painful. The thought alone was enough to make him lose motivation. As he sat there struggling with the problem, he noticed Mrs. Meng sitting at the table. Looking at him carefully, she asked whether he was feeling all right. Jinkyu immediately assured her that he was fine. Before the conversation could continue, Ah-hyun casually commented that his face always looked like that anyway. She added that his stomach was constantly upset and that there was absolutely nothing unusual about his current appearance. Hearing that, Mrs. Meng immediately came to his defense. She told Ah-hyun that his miserable expression was probably caused by her constant treatment of him. According to Mrs. Meng, Ah-hyun never stopped tormenting him whenever she had the chance. The argument escalated almost instantly. Mrs. Meng moved toward Ah-hyun and physically forced her down while demanding to know whether she understood what kind of trouble she was causing. Meanwhile, Jinkyu remained seated and quietly watched the scene unfold before him. As he observed them, he reflected on who Mrs. Meng actually was. Her full name was Soo-jung Meng. She was not only Ah-hyun's mother but also a close friend of his own mother. In many ways, he regarded her as a second mother figure. More importantly, she was the only person he had ever seen who could completely overpower Ah-hyun. To put it simply, Soo-jung was even stronger than Ah-hyun herself. Thinking about that fact, Jinkyu quickly reminded himself that he had never intended to involve Mrs. Meng in anything strange. Since she was basically like family to him, the idea of connecting her to the quest felt extremely uncomfortable. That realization only made his situation worse. If he wanted to complete the objective, then he would probably need to find another woman somewhere else. Unfortunately, he had no idea where he was supposed to find someone suitable. As a man in his 20s, he felt completely lost. The more he thought about everything, the more convinced he became that he had chosen the wrong ability. Perhaps he should have selected teleportation instead. At least that power seemed practical and easy to use. While he was busy regretting his decision, the doorbell suddenly rang. A package had arrived at the house. As soon as the package was brought inside, Soo-jung immediately questioned Ah-hyun about it. She demanded to know what her daughter had ordered this time. Ah-hyun casually replied that it was just some clothing. However, after the package was opened, everyone could see that it contained a very bold dress. Ah-hyun proudly announced that she intended to wear it. The moment Soo-jung saw the dress, she was horrified. She immediately declared that she would donate it to someone else because there was absolutely no way she would allow her daughter to wear something like that. She argued that if she allowed Ah-hyun complete freedom over her wardrobe, then before long she would be walking around in even more revealing outfits. Ah-hyun responded by telling her mother to try stopping her when the time came. In return, Soo-jung warned that she would completely cut off her allowance if she continued behaving that way. Not long after the argument ended, Ah-hyun shifted her attention toward Jinkyu. As usual, she immediately started ordering him around. She asked whether he had finished eating and then instructed him to go make coffee for her. Jinkyu reluctantly headed into the kitchen. While preparing the coffee, he reflected on how Ah-hyun always seemed to direct her frustration toward him. No matter what happened, he somehow ended up becoming the target. Suddenly, the status window appeared again. A message informed him that if he infused his power into the coffee, the person who drank it would be affected and the quest would be considered complete. At first, Jinkyu was surprised by how simple the solution seemed. He even admitted to himself that it was a clever idea. However, almost immediately, he rejected the suggestion. He told himself that he could never do something like that. Determined to ignore the system's recommendation, he prepared the coffee normally and brought it to Ah-hyun. Unfortunately, the moment she tasted it, she became angry once again. She started hitting him while complaining that she had specifically requested iced coffee. As he endured her complaints, Jinkyu found himself thinking that she truly behaved like a gorilla. In his opinion, she never seemed to realize when she was treating people unfairly. For perhaps the first time in years, a rebellious thought entered his mind. Maybe she really did deserve a lesson. Maybe he should finally complete the quest. Afterward, he returned to the kitchen and prepared a cold coffee. While making it, he reflected on the fact that Ah-hyun had acted this way for nearly 20 years. Sometimes she behaved as though she were the greatest woman in existence. Even then, however, his conscience continued bothering him. Although he had already infused his power into the drink, he still hesitated. Part of him wanted to deliver it immediately, but another part felt guilty. He reminded himself that there were things people could do and things they should not do. At the same time, he attempted to convince himself that this was somehow for the sake of justice. Eventually, he carried the cold coffee out of the kitchen. Just as Ah-hyun was about to take the cup, Soo-jung suddenly appeared, grabbed it first, and drank it herself. After taking a sip, she happily commented that she finally felt alive again. The moment Jin-kyu witnessed that scene, all the color drained from his face. His heart nearly stopped. The coffee had been intended for Ah-hyun, yet Soo-jung had consumed it instead. Before he could even process what had happened, the status window appeared once more. To his complete shock and horror, it informed him that the quest had been successfully completed and that he had received a reward of 1 additional point. The next day, Soo-jung was doing her usual workout routine at home, while Jin-kyu quietly watched her from nearby. As he observed her exercising, he found himself thinking about the addiction effect. He admitted to himself that he did not really know much about it, but from what he could see, Soo-jung did not appear to be any different from her normal self. She was acting the same way she always did, and there was nothing particularly unusual about her behavior. Meanwhile, he could not help comparing her situation to his own. He reflected on the tremendous transformation he had experienced after investing his reward status points into strength. The changes had been unbelievable. Before, he had barely been able to do a single push-up, but now his maximum number of push-ups had increased from 1 to 8. Even simple tasks that used to require effort, such as opening tightly sealed lids, had become incredibly easy for him. Thinking about it, he wondered whether it was really normal to become so much stronger in such a short period of time. The growth he was experiencing seemed unnatural. He also thought about the powerful willpower he possessed, and the fact that his strength continued increasing every day. The more he thought about it, the more concerned he became. He felt that if somebody ever caused trouble for him, he might actually become a dangerous person. There were moments when he even worried that all of this power might one day make him lose control and explode with anger. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted when Ah-hyun called out to him and asked him to fan her. Jin-kyu immediately refused. His response greatly disappointed her. Feeling proud of his newfound strength, he told her that he was incredibly strong now and that she should not mess with him. Ah-hyun looked at him as if he had completely lost his mind. Without hesitation, she began lightly hitting him, while telling him that he had finally gone crazy. The moment she started hitting him, all of his confidence instantly disappeared. He quickly surrendered and gave up his resistance. A short while later, he sat down beside her and obediently began fanning her. While fanning her, he silently reflected on the situation. He realized that gaining only a single strength point was completely useless when dealing with a gorilla-like girl, such as Ah-hyun. No matter how much stronger he became, she still felt overwhelmingly powerful. He also thought that it probably would not be long before the day came when she would lose everything in front of him. However, what concerned him even more was the strange phenomenon happening to his body. Every night, at exactly midnight, his strength doubled. At that point, he already had 2 clones, and with each passing day, things continued multiplying. One day passed, then another, and before long the situation had become increasingly difficult to ignore. Eventually, he realized that there was another serious problem that needed his attention. That morning, he was sitting at the breakfast table together with Ah-hyun and Soo-jung. While they were eating, Ah-hyun noticed Soo-jung repeatedly drinking milk. Curious about her behavior, Ah-hyun asked whether she was participating in some kind of challenge. Soo-jung immediately denied it and explained that she was simply thirsty. Her answer seemed casual enough, but the moment Jin-kyu heard it, a status window suddenly appeared in front of him. The message informed him that the addiction effect granted as a limited reward for the tutorial quest had finally begun taking effect. After reading the notification, he carefully looked at Soo-jung again. He thought that she seemed to be getting worse little by little. Even so, he convinced himself that perhaps it would be fine to leave things alone for now and simply continue observing her condition. A little later, Soo-jung looked at both of them and asked whether they had anything planned for the day. Before either of them could answer, she informed them that they would be deep cleaning the entire house that day. Since it had been some time since the last thorough cleaning, she wanted every room cleaned properly. She told them to get ready because there would be plenty of work to do. The moment she mentioned cleaning, Ah-hyun completely ignored the entire plan. She casually announced that she already had plans for the day and immediately left. Watching her run away at incredible speed, Soo-jung could only stare in disbelief. She remarked that with that level of speed, Ah-hyun could probably win an Olympic gold medal without much difficulty. Seeing Ah-hyun successfully escape, Jin-kyu attempted to do the same. He stood up and claimed that he also had something important to do and needed to head out. Unfortunately for him, Soo-jung immediately stopped him before he could leave. She informed him that there was no chance of escaping and that he would be helping her clean the house. Left with no choice, Jin-kyu reluctantly agreed. The two of them then began cleaning the various rooms throughout the house. Everything proceeded normally, until Soo-jung entered Jinkyu's room. The moment she stepped inside, she froze in shock. Several clones of Jinkyu were already inside the room. The unexpected sight completely stunned her. For several moments, she could not even process what she was seeing. Looking at the multiple versions of Jinkyu standing before her, she was left speechless. Seeing her reaction, Jinkyu began explaining the situation. He told her that things had simply ended up that way somehow, and that the entire story was incredibly long and complicated. After explaining the basics of the situation, he suggested that they make use of the clones for teamwork. According to him, the clones could easily handle cleaning his room while also playing his games at the same time. He confidently explained that having multiple versions of himself was actually very efficient. Since the clones could take care of everything, he even encouraged Soo-jung to sit down and rest instead of exhausting herself. Still unable to understand what was happening, Soo-jung remained seated while watching the clones move around the house. Every direction she looked, another clone was cleaning something. Some were dusting, some were organizing, and others were busy handling various chores. Meanwhile, she was simply sitting there trying to comprehend the absurd situation unfolding before her eyes. All of the clones were wandering around the house without wearing any clothes. Completely horrified by the sight, she immediately turned toward Jinkyu and declared that he and all of his clones must have gone insane. Without wasting another second, she gathered clothes for every single clone and forced them to put them on. Once they were all properly dressed, the clones resumed their cleaning duties as though nothing unusual had happened. After all the yelling, confusion, and chaos, Soo-jung let out an exhausted sigh. She complained that she was becoming thirsty once again and needed something to drink. She walked over to the refrigerator and grabbed a soda. As she stood there drinking, her thoughts wandered. She reflected on how troublesome Jinkyu had always been. Yet somehow, despite all of his previous antics, he had now managed to create multiple clones of himself. To make matters worse, all of those clones were now running around the house and driving her crazy. At the same time, something else continued bothering her. No matter how much she drank, her thirst refused to go away. Everything felt dry. It did not matter how much liquid she consumed, because the uncomfortable sensation remained exactly the same. She found herself unable to tolerate it any longer. Thinking about it, she wondered whether ordinary drinks simply were not enough. Perhaps she needed something stronger. Perhaps a proper power banana shake would finally satisfy her thirst. She collapsed directly in front of the refrigerator. A short time later, Jinkyu found her lying there. Alarmed by the sight, he immediately rushed over and asked whether she was all right. Although Soo-jung claimed that she was fine, it was obvious that something was wrong. Concerned for her condition, Jinkyu suggested that she lie down and rest for a while. He carefully helped her onto a bed and made sure she was comfortable. As he stood beside her, another status window suddenly appeared before him. The message informed him that she needed some protein shakes in order to recover quickly. Seeing the notification, Jinkyu quickly prepared some coffee. After mixing the cream into it, he brought the drink over to her. He told her that he had prepared some coffee and encouraged her to drink it. Just then, another status window appeared. This one contained an even more alarming message. According to the notification, if he failed to do something soon, she might actually die. The warning instantly filled him with panic. Fear began spreading through his entire body as countless thoughts rushed through his mind. He desperately searched for a solution. In that moment, he realized how important Soo-jung truly was to him. He remembered all the times she had been the first person to rush forward and protect him whenever he found himself in trouble. No matter what happened, she had always been there for him. In his eyes, she was the strongest person he had ever known. She was also the most beautiful woman in the entire world. The thought of losing her was unbearable. He loved her more than anyone else, even more than his own mother. Because of that, he knew that he could not allow anything to happen to her. Determination gradually replaced his panic. No matter what it took, he had to save her. After reaching that conclusion, Jinkyu finally made his decision. He decided to perform the fat-burning training with her. After Jinkyu finished the conditioning training session with Soo-jung, a status window suddenly appeared in front of him. The notification informed him that he had successfully completed the quest. As a reward for completing it, he was granted a special item in the form of a pair of glasses. Not long afterward, Soo-jung slowly woke up. Seeing that she was finally conscious again, Jinkyu told her that she had only been asleep for around 4 hours. Soo-jung nodded and replied that it seemed he had taken very good care of her while she was resting. She then mentioned that she was feeling much better after getting some sleep. While listening to her, Jinkyu put on the glasses he had just received as a reward. What he had been given were not ordinary glasses. They were a pair of magical X-ray glasses. The following day, around lunchtime, Soo-jung asked the children whether there was anything special they wanted to eat. Ah-hyun immediately replied that she did not want anything in particular. After that, Soo-jung turned her attention toward Jinkyu and asked whether there was something he wanted to eat. She told him to give her a clear answer instead of being vague. Jinkyu replied that he did not think he was hungry. He also mentioned that his clones were not hungry either. In fact, neither he nor any of his clones had even eaten breakfast that morning. As the conversation continued, Jinkyu found himself thinking about everything that had happened over the previous 2 days. He reflected on all the things he had done involving Sujung and felt increasingly conflicted about it. Deep down, he believed that he should not allow himself to make harmful choices regarding her. He reminded himself that he possessed the power to stop himself whenever necessary. More importantly, he felt responsible for preventing bad things from happening to her. Rather than causing problems, he believed that he should be taking care of her and protecting her. However, those thoughts became much harder to maintain because of the magical glasses he was wearing. Through the X-ray glasses, he was able to see straight through things. While Sujung was busy preparing lunch in the kitchen, Jinkyu continuously found himself looking in her direction. His attention kept drifting toward her over and over again. Meanwhile, Sujung gradually became aware that something felt strange. As she continued cooking, she thought that Jinkyu probably believed she would not notice his behavior. However, it was impossible for her not to notice. Not only was Jinkyu staring at her, but all of his clones were staring at her as well. The entire situation felt incredibly strange. The more she noticed it, the more uncomfortable she became. She felt as though she was in serious trouble. After observing the situation for a while, she concluded that she would have to make him cry for real if she wanted to snap him out of whatever strange state he was currently in. Eventually, lunch was finished, and she began placing the food onto the dining table. While doing so, she reflected on Jinkyu's behavior. Despite everything, she realized that he was not actually a bad kid. He could be troublesome and strange at times, but his intentions were not always malicious. Just then, several of Jinkyu's clones suddenly appeared. They offered to handle the dishes after everyone finished eating. However, Sujung immediately refused their offer. At the same time, Jinkyu himself realized that much of what he was experiencing was simply a biological reaction. He understood that constantly yelling at himself would not solve anything. As everyone continued moving around the kitchen, Jinkyu eventually walked over and stood directly behind Sujung. He then asked her to hand over her apron. Sujung turned toward him and immediately noticed the disappointed expression on his face. Seeing that look made her even more curious about what was going on with him. Her attention soon shifted to the glasses he was wearing. She asked him why he had been wearing those glasses all day. Jinkyu casually replied that he had always worn them whenever he used a computer. He then added that the reason she had never noticed before was because she rarely paid attention to him. After hearing that explanation, Sujung became even more suspicious. She asked him to hand the glasses over to her. Jinkyu immediately refused. He explained that he did not usually share his glasses with other people. His refusal only increased her curiosity. Without waiting for permission, Sujung slapped him across the face, grabbed the glasses from him, and put them on herself. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. Through the lenses, she was able to see through a person's outer clothing and view what was underneath. The realization left her completely stunned. Still wearing the glasses, she slowly turned toward Jinkyu with an expression filled with disbelief and demanded an explanation from him. At that moment, she wanted to know exactly what kind of glasses he had been wearing and why he had been staring at her so much throughout the day. Jinkyu told everything to Sujung, and she responded by saying that she now understood the entire situation. She explained that he had always been frustrated about constantly losing to Aion, and that in his desperation for power he ended up gaining the ability to create clones. She further said that he received something called a quest, even though he had no real intention of completing it, but his clone proceeded to carry it out regardless. She added that he never intended for her to drink that copied substance, yet she happened to arrive at that moment and consumed it, which resulted in what was being referred to as protein addiction. She then described that she had fainted, and everything that followed happened to her because of that incident, and from that point onward she needed to be given a dose of the high-protein shake at least once a day. After hearing this, he confirmed that everything she said was correct, but she immediately slapped him hard and told him that there were limits to what he could or could not do to her, and that just because she had been lenient with him did not mean he could behave in such a way. She also said that she had raised him like her own son, yet he was now involved in something like this with her. He tried to defend himself by saying that he had no choice and that he did not want things to turn out this way, but she accused him of spending too much time looking at her in a way that made everything suspicious, while he insisted that she was the one constantly walking around in front of him wearing an apron, and that his actions were unintentional. At that moment, his clone suddenly appeared and told her to take a closer look while wearing the glasses and observe his weapon more carefully, which left her extremely embarrassed and unable to admit anything. Following that, the clones began pressuring her and making her comply with their demands, and they eventually started a physically exhausting training session with her. At night, Sujung decided that all of Jinkyu's clones should be transferred and shifted into her gym and yoga academy for containment and management, and upon hearing this, Jinkyu began thinking that this could not possibly be a permanent solution, and that it was only a temporary arrangement, meaning that something more stable and reliable needed to be done before the situation escalated further or became completely unmanageable. At that moment, he noticed the status window displaying something labeled as the clone storage skill, and when he focused on it, the explanation showed that this system was designed to store clones in a sealed condition, meaning that once a clone was inserted into storage, it would remain preserved as a single stable unit, even for an extremely long duration, even up to 1,000 years without degradation. However, the explanation also clearly stated that any clones that remained outside of this storage system would not remain stable and would instead begin to self-replicate at midnight, doubling in number every single day, which meant that if they were not properly contained, their growth would become uncontrollable and rapidly exponential. In simpler terms, as long as the clones were safely stored within the system, there would be no risk of uncontrolled multiplication or endless expansion, but if left outside, they would continue increasing without limit in a constantly accelerating cycle. Sujung listened carefully to everything he was explaining, taking in the details of the system and its consequences, and after a brief pause, she stated that they should leave immediately and get moving without delay in order to deal with the situation. Jinkyu then admitted to her that he had not yet acquired the clone storage skill because it required meeting a specific condition in order to unlock it, and when she asked what that condition was, he reluctantly explained that, in simple terms, it required performing a full-body training session with another person as part of the unlocking requirement. Upon hearing this, Sujung immediately became upset and questioned how he could even suggest such a requirement to her, especially when she had a daughter at home, and she accused him of being irresponsible and inappropriate despite knowing her circumstances and personal life. Jinkyu quickly tried to clarify that the requirement was not something personal or intentional, and that it was simply a symbolic system condition that had to be fulfilled, insisting that she only needed to assist him in order for the skill to be unlocked and that there was no alternative method available, repeatedly emphasizing that this was the only possible solution he had access to at the moment. However, Sujung refused to accept his explanation and told him firmly to leave and go find a girlfriend instead, saying that he should perform such training sessions with someone else who would willingly agree, and she made it clear that she could not place herself in that kind of role under any circumstances. Jinkyu responded by saying that girls were not interested in someone like him, expressing his lack of confidence, but Sujung immediately countered him by saying that the real problem was not his appearance or situation but the fact that he never confessed his feelings or expressed himself to anyone, and she insisted that this was exactly what kept causing him to fail repeatedly. She continued by encouraging him to treat this as an opportunity to improve himself, telling him that at his age he should begin forming relationships properly and that it was the right time in life to start building such connections instead of avoiding them. After that day, she repeatedly told him to try approaching different girls and to ask them out, but despite her encouragement, he continued to fail each time he attempted it, unable to succeed in any of his efforts. One day, while sitting with him again, she asked him a very important question about what he believed was the most essential quality for a man, and Jinkyu responded by saying that a man's weapon or strength was the most important factor. But upon hearing this, Sujung immediately shouted at him and corrected him, saying that it was not physical strength or anything like that, but confidence that mattered most. She explained in detail that even if a person had nothing else, as long as they possessed confidence, it would naturally influence how others perceived them and could draw people toward them in a more natural way. After that, she began acting out different scenarios with him, demonstrating how he should approach a girl and how he should express himself when proposing or confessing, repeatedly showing him example dialogues and insisting that if he followed the correct method, any girl would eventually be influenced and develop feelings in return. However, she also added that he could not simply approach anyone randomly and needed to choose a woman who would genuinely appreciate and understand his sincerity, otherwise it would not work properly. Jinkyu admitted that he did not know what type of woman he actually liked, and Sujung told him that he would eventually understand it himself once he met the right person at the right time, rather than forcing an answer prematurely. She further explained that it would be his responsibility to build a meaningful connection where the other person would naturally care for him, spend time with him, and share experiences beyond superficial interaction, emphasizing emotional connection and mutual understanding. Despite the seriousness of her guidance, some parts of her advice were overly simplified and somewhat unrealistic in how she described relationships, yet she continued guiding him through repeated practice conversations, instructing him on tone, behavior, and timing. And both of them continued rehearsing these situations together in that same place as he attempted to follow her instructions step by step. Jinkyu and Sujung had begun performing a cardiovascular training session together, and while both of them were fully engaged in the routine, someone had been watching them from a distance without their notice. That person, after observing the situation for a moment, quickly moved away and approached Choi Seon, reporting what they had seen in a way that made it sound suspicious. As the training continued without interruption, Choi Seon, the instructor from Sujung Academy, soon arrived at the location with a serious expression, clearly believing that something inappropriate or dangerous might be happening. Without properly verifying the situation, she immediately assumed that Jinkyu was misbehaving with Sujung and rushed in to intervene, attacking Jinkyu in order to stop what she thought was wrongdoing. While doing so, Choi Seon also spoke to Sujung, telling her that she had been attacked or harmed by Jinkyu and that he had come there to protect her from him. However, Sujung reacted calmly and firmly, stating that Jinkyu was actually a weak man who would easily go down from even a single attack, and therefore it was not possible that she had been attacked or overpowered by him in any serious way. Her tone made it clear that she did not agree with Choi Seon's interpretation of the situation at all. Choi Seon then asked her whether what was happening between them was mutual or not, trying to understand the true nature of their interaction, and Sujung responded by explaining that Jinkyu was simply helping her to change and improve herself, and that there was no harmful or improper intent behind their actions. She further clarified that everything Choi Seon had witnessed was only from her limited perspective, and that she had misunderstood the situation entirely. She also expressed frustration, saying that he usually claims to believe her words without question, but in this instance he was doubting her, despite her explanation, which she felt was unfair and inconsistent with her usual trust in her. Meanwhile, Jinkyu, still affected by the sudden attack, told Choi Seon that she should apologize to him because he had been beaten for no reason or misunderstanding. Wuri Wu was also present nearby, quietly observing everything that was happening without directly intervening, and Sujung then addressed her as well, saying that she hoped Wuri had also understood the situation correctly. She added that whatever Wuri thought she had seen was also likely influenced by partial understanding, and then she asked her whether she was planning to start from tomorrow or after 2 days. Sujung suggested that since Wuri was already there, she might as well begin from today itself instead of delaying, and Wuri agreed to that arrangement without objection. After this, Sujung concluded that it seemed like everyone had now understood the situation properly, and she suggested that they should all head to the hospital to take care of Jinkyu's injuries. She instructed them not to worry about the incident anymore, and instead focus on preparing for upcoming classes and also conducting Wuri's level test as planned. She then turned to Choi Seon and instructed her to temporarily restrict access to the area and to stay away from the situation for the time being, while reassuring her that nothing serious had occurred, and that she would handle and resolve everything herself soon. After this, Jinkyu once again approached Sujung and told her that they needed to complete what they had started earlier, referring to their ongoing training. However, Sujung immediately rejected his request and firmly told him that from that moment onward, he was banned from coming near her. Despite her rejection, Jinkyu continued to apologize repeatedly and tried to convince her to resume the fat-burning training with him, insisting that it was still necessary, but she remained firm and refused to accept his request. Even after his repeated attempts to persuade her, she did not change her decision. Eventually, both of them entered the elevator together, and during the ride, Jinkyu suddenly lost his balance and fell down, getting injured as a result of the movement. After this incident, he returned home while thinking deeply about the situation, reflecting that both of them already knew she would eventually come back to him the next day, and that the real issue was his own inability to control his excitement whenever he saw her, which made him impatient and unable to wait properly until tomorrow. He also thought about using his camera the next day since he had received 3 awards related to the show, and also had a random starting point item for health training. But he was confused about how to choose between them and what would be the best option. As he came out of his room, he unexpectedly noticed Ah-hyun sleeping on the sofa, completely unaware of his presence. Seeing this, he began quietly taking pictures of her using his camera, while the status window displayed that her defenses were gradually decreasing. He observed this and thought to himself that he was not sure what would happen once her defenses were fully lowered, but he decided to continue for the time being in order to see what results would appear, even though he still lacked a clear understanding of the outcome. He then considered that perhaps the photos needed to focus more on her body in order to be more effective, and he also thought that if he directly asked her, she might naturally pose for him while sleeping without resistance. However, while he was still taking pictures, Ah-hyun suddenly woke up and immediately reacted by kicking him forcefully, accusing him of testing things on her without permission, and then beginning to hit him repeatedly. She then looked closely at his face and asked if something had happened to him, while Jinkyu thought to himself that he could not tell her the truth about Choi Seon beating him, because she would likely investigate the entire situation in detail, and he would not be able to explain everything properly. When she asked him what he was doing, he hesitated and gave an unclear answer, which made her even more angry, and she demanded a proper explanation for why he was taking pictures. She then accused him of possibly taking inappropriate or suspicious photos, insisting that she wanted to check whether anything unusual appeared in them, and she warned him not to come near her again. After taking the pictures, Jinkyu quickly left the house, thinking that if this method could work even on someone as strong and aggressive as Ahyeon, then it might be even more effective on other people as well, and in his mind, the idea of a future Sujung photo shoot slowly began forming as a possible direction for what he could try next. Wuri Woo, a 21-year-old newcomer, was sitting across from the instructor, Choi Seon, as they discussed her registration details before the start of her training. Seon carefully reviewed the form in front of her and pointed out that there were no particular preferences listed for training times. As she continued looking through the paperwork, she noticed something else and brought it to Wuri's attention. She mentioned that Wuri had checked the box for the competitive division rather than the recreational division. Curious about her reasoning, Seon looked at her expectantly. Wuri confirmed that she had selected it intentionally. She explained that she did not want to participate merely for fun or treat it as a casual hobby. Instead, she wanted to approach the sport with the mindset of a competitor and challenge herself seriously. She wanted to train with dedication and commitment rather than simply attend recreational classes. After listening to her explanation, Seon informed her that she would nevertheless be switching her to the recreational division for the time being. She explained that they would first proceed with a level assessment in order to evaluate her current abilities before making any further decisions. Once that was settled, Seon instructed her to change into her uniform. She also informed her that the changing room was currently closed, meaning she would have to change in the available area nearby. After following the instructions and changing into her training outfit, Wuri returned to where Seon was waiting. The level test began immediately. Seon first asked her to raise her arms so that she could properly evaluate her posture and flexibility. She adjusted the position of Wuri's training attire where necessary as part of the assessment process and carefully observed her movements. The examination then moved into flexibility testing. Seon instructed Wuri to perform a variety of stretches and movements while closely monitoring her range of motion. Whenever necessary, she assisted her physically by helping guide her through the exercises. Throughout the process, Seon remained attentive and repeatedly reminded her that she should immediately speak up if she felt any pain or discomfort during the training. She wanted to ensure that Wuri completed the assessment safely and without risking any injury. The flexibility evaluation was only one portion of the assessment. Afterward, they continued with numerous additional tests designed to measure different aspects of her physical condition and athletic ability. One test followed another as Seon carefully observed and recorded her performance. The process took time, and by the end of it, Wuri was beginning to understand just how demanding the training environment would be. While the testing session was still ongoing, Sujung entered the area and noticed the two of them. She watched for a moment before directing her attention toward Wuri's progress. Interested in the results, she asked about the number of laps that Wuri had completed during the evaluation. After hearing the information, Sujung commented that they would take a closer look at everything the following day. She then informed Wuri that her actual training would begin tomorrow and that she should be prepared for it. Hearing this only made Wuri more aware of her own shortcomings. Looking somewhat discouraged, she admitted that she felt she was really bad at everything she had done so far. She confessed that she did not want to become a burden to the people around her, especially considering how inexperienced she felt compared to everyone else. In response, Sujung reassured her calmly. She reminded Wuri that she was there for the purpose of learning and improving. She explained that nobody expected her to be perfect from the beginning, and that everyone had to build themselves up step by step. According to Sujung, there was no reason for her to feel discouraged, because growth came through practice and experience. As the conversation continued, Jinkyu suddenly entered the area carrying a camera. Almost immediately, he began taking photographs. Spotting Sujung, he pointed the camera toward her and started snapping pictures while enthusiastically declaring that touching moments like these deserved to be documented. He acted as though he had arrived specifically to preserve memorable scenes for everyone. Not stopping there, he announced that he was also planning to take a group photo. After making that declaration, he shifted his attention toward taking individual photographs. He began enthusiastically photographing people one by one, before joking that even the director deserved a proper solo photoshoot. While looking around, he quickly noticed that Sujung was not wearing her judo uniform. Upon realizing this, he immediately questioned why she was not dressed appropriately for the photos. He then instructed her to go and change before returning. Continuing with his overenthusiastic planning, he claimed that he would even conduct a photo shoot inside the master's room once she came back wearing the uniform. As soon as Soo-jung left to change her clothes, Jinkyu began thinking about taking a picture of her. However, before he could act on the idea, Seon suddenly appeared. The moment she realized what he was attempting, she forcibly kicked him out of the room. Once again, his plans had been interrupted before he could accomplish anything. While being pushed away, Jinkyu complained internally. He thought that Seon had once again appeared at exactly the wrong moment and ruined his opportunity. In his mind, successfully taking a picture of Soo-jung would have been a significant achievement. As he stood outside, he reflected on the situation and realized that she was probably already done changing by now. He reasoned that she likely would not need to change clothes again until after work. Since he believed the opportunity had already passed, he concluded that there was little he could do except remain nearby and wait. As he waited alone, his attention shifted to the X-ray glasses he possessed. Thinking about them only increased his frustration. He complained to himself that the glasses were completely useless. He could not see any practical benefit to owning them, and he questioned why he even bothered carrying them around. He reasoned that there was no way he could simply swap a camera lens with the lenses from the glasses, making the entire concept seem pointless. Then, an idea suddenly crossed his mind. Even though he initially thought it was ridiculous, he decided to try it anyway. To his complete surprise, the method actually worked. The unexpected success immediately changed his mood. Realizing that he had discovered something useful, he became excited and convinced himself that he no longer needed to sit around waiting for opportunities. In his mind, this new discovery had solved his problem entirely. Filled with confidence, he headed back into the area. Unfortunately for him, his return was short-lived. Seon appeared once again, almost immediately. The moment she saw him, she once more began chasing him away and beating him for his actions. Despite the situation, Jinkyu remained oddly satisfied with his discovery. Even while trying to protect himself, he continued thinking that he had uncovered the perfect combination between the X-ray glasses and the strip camera. In his imagination, the two items formed an unbeatable combination, and he convinced himself that nothing could stop him now. The situation quickly deteriorated. During the struggle and confusion, Jinkyu lost his balance and fell to the ground. As he hit the floor, the glasses broke. While recovering from the fall and dealing with the loss of the glasses, his attention was suddenly drawn elsewhere. He noticed Worry leaving the area. The sight caught him off guard because he felt that she had left only moments earlier. Given the amount of time that had passed, he expected her to be much farther away by now. Instead, she was still nearby. This observation immediately caused him to wonder if something was wrong. He began considering the possibility that she might have injured her leg during the testing session. Thinking about it further, he reasoned that perhaps she should have taken the elevator rather than using the stairs if she was having difficulty moving around. The more he thought about it, the more concerned he became. Deciding that he should check on her, he began following after her. He quickened his pace until he was able to catch up. Once he reached her, he approached her directly. Rather than immediately asking about her condition, he unexpectedly began the conversation by asking whether she had ever been interested in modeling, a question that came as a complete surprise. As Jinkyu walked alongside Worry Woo, he decided to begin with a simple conversation, and since they had only met recently, he started with a basic introduction and asked her a few casual questions about herself. During that time, Jinkyu noticed that instead of heading toward the elevator, Worry was making her way toward the stairs. Curious about her choice, he asked why she preferred using the stairs rather than taking the elevator like most people would. Worry answered honestly and explained that she was afraid of elevators. She admitted that using them made her uncomfortable, which was why she avoided them whenever possible and chose the stairs instead, even when it required more effort. After hearing her explanation, Jinkyu commented that he had already begun to notice that she seemed to be afraid of many different things. Although he said it in a casual manner, he was genuinely curious about her personality. However, there was one thing that confused him even more. He told her that despite knowing how cautious and timid she appeared to be, he could not understand why she had agreed to his proposal to participate in a modeling photo shoot. Looking at her reactions and behavior, he remarked that it almost felt as though she had accepted the offer because she believed she had no other choice. While continuing the conversation, Jinkyu shifted the topic toward the photo shoot itself. He explained that the concept he was interested in pursuing was centered more around endurance training and physical conditioning rather than traditional fashion photography. He told her that the theme focused on athletic effort and physical development. Because of that, he felt it might be appropriate to showcase some aspects of her physique and training progress during the shoot. As he explained his ideas, he continued taking photographs of her. Every now and then he lifted the camera, adjusted the angle, and captured another image. While doing so, he repeatedly complimented her appearance. He told her that she was genuinely cute and that the photographs were turning out much better than he had expected. Looking at the results on the camera screen, he confidently remarked that pictures like these had the potential to go viral. His enthusiasm remained high as he continued snapping pictures from different positions and perspectives. However, after taking several photographs, Jinkyu suddenly realized that he was running out of ideas. Internally, he admitted to himself that he had only met Wuri earlier that day. Because of that, he knew very little about her personality, interests, habits, or lifestyle. He found himself wondering how he was supposed to continue the photo shoot when he barely knew anything about his subject. As these thoughts crossed his mind, he became increasingly aware that he lacked a clear direction for what should come next. After thinking for a short while, he decided that the outdoor portion of the shoot had probably gone as far as it could for the moment. He then suggested that they wrap up the outdoor session and continue with an indoor shoot instead. Wuri agreed, and the two of them headed toward her residence. Once they arrived, Jinkyu naturally became curious about the place. Looking around, he asked whether she lived there alone. After receiving her attention, he followed up with another question and asked whether she had ever brought a man there before. Wuri straightforwardly answered that she had not. Hearing that response, Jinkyu quickly clarified his intentions. He explained that he understood perfectly well that she had only invited him there because of the photo shoot. He wanted to make it clear that he was aware of the professional reason behind his presence. As they continued moving through the building, Jinkyu remembered that Wuri had been struggling somewhat because of the condition of her legs. Noticing her movements, he offered to help her as they made their way up the stairs. He suggested that he could assist her with walking and tried to make things easier for her during the climb. While accompanying her, he found himself observing her more closely. Internally, he could not help thinking once again about how cute she was. At the same time, he also reflected on himself and considered that he was not particularly strong either. These thoughts remained in the back of his mind as they continued upward together. Eventually, they reached the rooftop area where Wuri lived. The moment Jinkyu stepped onto the rooftop, his eyes immediately wandered around with excitement and curiosity. He appeared fascinated by the environment and openly expressed his amazement. He remarked that she actually lived on a rooftop and admitted that he had always wanted to visit a place like that. The setting felt unique and interesting to him, and he eagerly looked around as though exploring it for the first time. As he continued observing the surroundings, he wondered aloud whether someone could have a barbecue there. He also asked whether it would be possible to play the guitar on the rooftop. Wuri quickly responded by telling him that doing either of those things would likely get him into trouble. She explained that the landlady was extremely strict and would not tolerate such activities. Wuri then admitted that she was actually afraid of the landlady because of how strict she could be. Hearing that, Jinkyu immediately turned the conversation into a joke and asked whether she was also afraid of him. Unfortunately for him, at almost the exact same moment, he stumbled and fell to the ground. The timing of the incident made the situation unintentionally funny. Seeing him suddenly lose his balance, Wuri burst into laughter. Amused by both the question and the fall, she answered yes, which only made the moment even more embarrassing for him. After recovering from the fall, Jinkyu quickly returned to work and resumed taking photographs. He continued moving around the rooftop while capturing different images of Wuri. During the session, he eventually decided to share an observation with her. He told her that even though they had only just met, he genuinely felt that she had absolutely no sense of fashion. He explained that this impression came from seeing the clothes in her wardrobe. Based on what he had observed, he believed that her fashion choices lacked style and variety. Because of this opinion, he suggested that they might as well create a lookbook-style photoshoot while they were already working together. He proposed that she could change into some of her favorite clothes and allow him to photograph different outfits and looks. As he continued discussing the idea, he found himself thinking privately about the situation. He believed that if he could somehow help her become more natural and comfortable while following his directions, then everything else he wanted to accomplish during the shoot would eventually fall into place on its own. After thinking about the matter further, Jinkyu eventually changed his mind. He decided to abandon the lookbook concept and pursue a lifestyle-style photoshoot instead. He explained this new idea to Wuri and then began asking questions about her daily routine at home. He wanted to know what she normally did throughout the day because he hoped to recreate ordinary moments rather than staged poses. To begin, he asked her to sit at a table and pretend that she was about to eat something. He explained that he wanted to capture photographs that felt random and natural rather than overly planned. As he observed her sitting there, he commented that she looked less like someone casually eating and more like a model posing for a magazine. He jokingly remarked that perhaps there should actually be something on the table in front of her if they wanted the scene to feel believable. Continuing to guide her through the process, he guessed that she probably liked sweets and suggested that she should behave exactly the way she normally would at home. He repeatedly encouraged her to stop focusing on the camera and simply act naturally. According to him, the best photographs would come from genuine moments rather than forced poses. Throughout the session, he continuously offered instructions and encouragement while trying to make her more comfortable. As time passed, his efforts gradually began to work. After considerable persuasion and guidance, she became increasingly relaxed in front of the camera. Their conversation flowed more naturally, and she slowly became more willing to follow his suggestions. With enough reassurance and continued discussion, Jinkyu eventually succeeded in convincing her to participate in the conditioning and fitness-related session that he had been planning. By that point, she had become cooperative enough to trust his direction, allowing the photo shoot to continue according to his intended concept. After successfully completing the fat-burning training with Woo, Jinkyu decided that they should have lunch together and immediately ordered chicken for both of them. While they were eating, he casually mentioned that the photo shoot they had been working on for the day was officially finished and that everything had gone according to plan. However, just as Jinkyu was about to leave, a status window suddenly appeared before him. The message revealed that Woo was feeling extremely lonely. Seeing this, he became concerned and decided to ask her whether she was free the following day. Woo explained that she had judo training scheduled for tomorrow. After hearing her answer, Jinkyu immediately suggested that they could simply do another photo shoot after her judo class was over. Woo looked hesitant and admitted that she was not very good at acting. She also confessed that participating in photo shoots made her feel nervous and nauseous because she lacked confidence in herself. Jinkyu listened to her concerns before reassuring her that everything would be fine. He then informed her that he would personally pick her up the next day and encouraged her to continue participating in photo shoots with him. After listening to his encouragement, she eventually agreed. At that exact moment, the status window appeared once again and showed that she was experiencing a growing sense of belonging. With that settled, Jinkyu finally left while Woo returned home. As soon as she entered her house, her emotions began overwhelming her. Painful memories from her past started resurfacing one after another. She remembered countless moments when people had scolded her, criticized her, and insulted her throughout various stages of her life. Unable to hold back her emotions, she started crying. After some time, she sat down in front of her computer and began playing a game in an attempt to distract herself. Unfortunately, she soon realized that she had lost once again. Staring at the screen, she became trapped in a spiral of negative thoughts. She questioned why she kept crying herself to sleep only to wake up and cry again after failing at something else. She convinced herself that she was terrible at everything she tried. Although she knew she should start preparing for her judo classes, she felt as though she would only get in everyone's way. She believed that she would simply become a burden and interrupt others during training. Because of that, she considered staying home instead. In her mind, remaining at home seemed like the better option. Her thoughts continued becoming darker as she convinced herself that the world would probably be better without someone like her, because she considered herself nothing more than a loser. Suddenly, her phone received a message. Looking at the screen, she discovered that it was from Jinkyu. Along with the message, he had transferred the payment for the photo shoot. He informed her that the money was her payment and told her that he was already looking forward to their next photo shoot together. As she stared at the message, memories of their previous conversation began returning to her mind. She remembered Jinkyu telling her that they could continue taking photos whenever she was available, whether it was today, tomorrow, or any other day, because he had countless ideas he wanted to try. She also remembered him saying that she possessed exactly the image he had been searching for all along. Thinking about those words caused a noticeable change in her mood. For the first time that day, she felt genuinely happy. Excitement gradually replaced the sadness she had been carrying. She decided that it was finally time to make a change in her life and stop hiding inside her house. As she gathered her courage, she told herself that if she continued running away every time things became difficult, she would spend the rest of her life living exactly as she was now. She realized that constantly avoiding challenges would only keep her trapped in the same cycle of self-hatred. While leaving her house, one of her neighbors noticed her and asked whether she was heading out somewhere. The neighbor then requested that she throw away some trash on her way. Woo quietly agreed and took the trash with her before continuing on her way. Later, she entered a cafe and attempted to order some toast. However, after receiving her order, she realized that they had mistakenly given her egg toast instead of the toast she intended to order. Although she knew the order was wrong, she could not bring herself to say anything. Rather than asking for it to be changed, she simply accepted it. As usual, she blamed herself for the situation. She thought that she lacked the courage to speak up and criticized herself for being weak, underconfident, and pathetic. After leaving the cafe, she eventually arrived at her judo class. During the training session, Instructor Sion approached her and informed her that she would only be practicing basic drills for the time being. He carefully explained that even fundamental training exercises still carried a significant risk of injury for her current condition. Because of that, he instructed her to stretch consistently and be extremely careful during training. Wuriwu quietly agreed and followed his instructions. She wondered whether someone like her could truly change. She repeatedly told herself that she was not good at anything. She questioned whether she had simply been born foolish, and whether she should have accepted that reality from the beginning. She doubted her own potential and believed that no matter how hard she tried, she would never accomplish anything significant. Deep down, she felt certain that she would never get very far in life. Once the class was finally over, she walked outside and was surprised to discover Jinkyu waiting there for her. He greeted her with a smile and reminded her that he had promised to pick her up. He then suggested that they should proceed with the photo shoot that very day. Wuriwu agreed, and the two of them began walking together. As they climbed the stairs, Jinkyu noticed that she was carrying a heavy bag. Immediately remembering his previous warnings, he told her that he had already instructed her not to carry heavy things. Without hesitation, he took the bag from her hands and carried it himself. As they continued walking, he complimented her by saying that she looked especially cute that day. He encouraged her to hurry so that they could get going. Soon afterward, they arrived at a clothing store where the photo shoot would take place. Jinkyu selected several beautiful outfits for her to wear and guided her through different poses. He carefully directed her throughout the session while taking numerous photographs. Despite her lack of confidence, the photo shoot went remarkably well, and she performed much better than she expected. During the session, Jinkyu noticed a group of girls standing nearby. They were watching Wuriwu while making fun of her. The girls mocked her appearance and sarcastically commented that even pathetic girls were trying to become models these days. Their cruel words deeply hurt Wuriwu and immediately damaged the confidence she had been slowly building. Seeing the effect their insults had on her, Jinkyu became furious. Unable to tolerate their behavior, he confronted them and shouted at them for mocking her. After the photo shoot was finished, the two of them left the store together. Along the way, Jinkyu continued trying to reassure her. He sincerely told her that she was a beautiful girl. However, Wuriwu still struggled to accept those compliments and insisted that a girl like her could never become a model. Hearing her say that, Jinkyu firmly explained that he was not praising her simply to make her feel better. He told her that his reactions toward her were genuine and that he truly found her attractive. He then stated that he would prove it to her. To demonstrate his point, he summoned another clone of himself. After the clone appeared, Jinkyu casually explained that the person standing beside them was technically his twin, although he claimed that detail was not particularly important. He then instructed Wuriwu to strike a pose in front of the clone. Following his directions, she stood in front of the clone and posed, while Jinkyu began taking photographs. He continued capturing picture after picture, while using the clone as evidence that his reactions and compliments were completely genuine. Once the photoshoot was complete, Jinkyu, his clone, and Wuriwu proceeded to perform another training session together. After completing the photoshoot and fitness conditioning training session with Jinkyu's clone, Jinkyu dismissed the clone and sent it back into storage. He thought about how convenient it had become to store his clones out of sight whenever they were not needed. Not only could he summon them whenever necessary, but he could also switch places with them by swapping a clone with his main body. The ability allowed him to move around without physically traveling everywhere himself, making many tasks significantly easier. Despite these advantages, several problems still remained unresolved. One of the biggest issues was the maintenance of the clones. Every clone required a regular injection of some vanilla protein in order to eliminate the risk of spontaneous reproduction, and Jinkyu had no idea how he would realistically manage that process for every single clone he possessed. The growing number of clones only made the situation more complicated. His thoughts eventually shifted toward Wuriwu and the daily full-body training sessions he had been conducting with her. He admitted to himself that what he really needed was someone as cooperative as her but with far greater stamina. In his opinion, Sujung would have been a much better candidate for those activities. He knew that if he truly wanted to, he could simply choose her instead. However, he also understood that if Sujung eventually left his side, then none of his clones, plans, or achievements would really matter to him. That was the reason he had spent the last 2 days waiting patiently. Even so, after all that waiting, it seemed as though his patience would finally be rewarded that very night. Meanwhile, on another day, Sujung was attending her judo master class. During the lesson, she appeared noticeably uncomfortable and distracted. Instructor Sion noticed her condition and approached her from behind to ask whether she was feeling all right. Sujung quickly assured him that she was fine, explaining that she was simply a little busy and tired that day. As the training session continued, the other members of the club gradually finished their activities and began returning home, one by one. After observing her condition for some time, Seon once again expressed concern and suggested that she should visit a doctor. However, Soo-jung brushed off the suggestion and told him not to worry about her. She then asked him whether he had truly decided not to trust anything she said anymore. Hearing that, Seon immediately apologized and clarified that he had not meant it that way. Realizing that she did not want to discuss the matter further, he informed her that he would be leaving and eventually walked away. Hidden nearby, Jinkyu had been watching the entire situation unfold. The moment Seon disappeared from sight, Jinkyu realized that the obstacle standing in his way was finally gone. He concluded that it was time to put his plan into action. For the past 2 days, his strategy had been simple. He intended to wait until Soo-jung became exhausted and weakened by her withdrawal symptoms before approaching her. Once that happened, he planned to continue conducting photo shoots and carefully set up opportunities that would encourage her to approach him on her own. In his mind, all he needed to do was continue shooting workouts and training sessions with her. He believed that when someone was emotionally and physically drained, they were less likely to feel guilty or suspicious. Under those circumstances, he thought he would be able to spend time with her without worrying about breaking trust or dealing with feelings of guilt. With those thoughts in mind, Jinkyu finally approached Soo-jung and attempted to begin another full-body training session with her. However, before he could proceed very far, Seon unexpectedly returned. The moment he arrived and understood what was happening, he immediately confronted Jinkyu. The confrontation quickly escalated into a violent fight between the two. During the struggle, Seon angrily accused Jinkyu of betraying the kindness that Soo-jung had shown him. He declared that she had cared for him like family, yet he was taking advantage of her when she was exhausted, vulnerable, and struggling. His words struck hard, and for a brief moment Jinkyu realized how dangerous the situation had become. As the fight intensified, he became convinced that he might actually lose. Just when things seemed hopeless for him, one of Jinkyu's clones suddenly arrived. The clone immediately intervened and protected him from Seon's attacks. It then joined the battle, creating an even larger conflict. The clone claimed that it understood the tricks Seon was trying to pull and aggressively continued the fight. Meanwhile, Seon focused not only on defending himself, but also on trying to help Soo-jung. Throughout the confrontation, Seon repeatedly insisted that Soo-jung needed proper medical attention. He declared that he was taking her home and that she needed to visit a doctor as soon as possible. Jinkyu, however, refused to back down. He insisted that he was the only person capable of helping her feel better and demanded that Seon leave immediately. He argued that there was no time left to waste and ordered Seon to hand Soo-jung over to him before walking away. When Seon continued resisting, Jinkyu warned that if he refused to leave voluntarily, he would be forcibly removed. Moments later, numerous clones of Jinkyu appeared at the scene. Acting together, they surrounded Seon and began restraining him. Despite struggling against them and cursing Jinkyu repeatedly, Seon was gradually overwhelmed by the sheer number of clones. They forced him to the ground and prevented him from interfering any further. With Seon restrained and unable to stop him, Jinkyu took hold of Soo-jung and began conducting another calorie-burning training session with her. At the same time, the clones continued pinning Seon to the floor. Unable to free himself and powerless to intervene, Seon could do nothing except watch the situation unfold. Choi Seon's father had always been an exceptionally strict and demanding man. Ever since she was a small child, he constantly pushed her to perform at the highest possible level in everything she did. Whether it was academics, sports, daily responsibilities, or personal development, he expected nothing less than excellence. He repeatedly told her that a person should always strive to achieve the best result possible, and that failing to achieve the best result simply meant that they had not truly discovered the limits of their own effort. According to him, if someone believed they had done their best, yet still failed to reach the highest standard, then they simply did not understand what their true best actually was. Those words were deeply engraved into Seon's mind from a very young age. As the years passed, she not only remembered those lessons but also gradually became exactly like her father. She adopted the same beliefs, the same standards, and the same relentless mindset. Her mother also contributed greatly to her upbringing, constantly teaching her valuable lessons about discipline, responsibility, and self-improvement. With both of her parents influencing her in such a way, Seon grew into a person who viewed the world through a very different lens compared to other children her age. Even on her own birthday, she often thought that cakes, parties, decorations, and celebrations were unnecessary and inefficient. Rather than appreciating them, she considered them wasteful and irrational because they did not contribute toward improvement or excellence. She frequently found herself criticizing many ordinary things that other children enjoyed. To someone as young as Seon, the world appeared to be filled with irrational behavior, inefficiency, and people who settled for less than their best. It was during those years that she realized how much judo truly meant to her. One day, while watching television, she saw Soo-jung competing in a judo tournament. The moment she saw her, something changed inside her. From that day onward, Soo-jung became the embodiment of everything Sion admired. She began studying everything about her idol. She copied her habits, her attitude, her methods, and even her way of approaching challenges. Every single day, Sion devoted herself completely to training. She poured every ounce of effort she possessed into improving herself. While others rested, she continued working. While others became satisfied with their progress, she continued pushing forward. Her dedication quickly began to produce results. She started standing out among her peers, earning recognition for her abilities and work ethic. Day after day, month after month, and year after year, she carefully shaped herself into the person she wanted to become. With each passing day, she felt herself moving closer to the ideal image of perfection that she had created in her mind. Eventually, while competing in a national high school sports tournament, Sion finally received the opportunity she had dreamed about for years. She was able to meet Soo-jung in person. The woman she had admired from afar for so long was finally standing right in front of her. For Sion, it felt almost unreal. That day became one of the most important days of her life. What made it even more special was the fact that Soo-jung personally praised her. She told Sion that she reminded her of her younger self and of the difficult struggles she had experienced during her early years. Hearing those words directly from the person she admired most left Sion overwhelmed with emotion. For the very first time, she truly understood what it meant to cry tears of happiness. The joy she felt that day was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. After that encounter, everything appeared to be progressing perfectly. Her path toward becoming the best version of herself seemed clear and steady. She believed she was moving exactly where she needed to go. Unfortunately, that promising future was suddenly shaken when her father's business collapsed. The failure was devastating for him. Having spent his entire life demanding excellence and refusing to accept weakness, he found himself unable to cope with his own defeat. Watching him struggle affected Sion deeply. Nevertheless, she tried to maintain the philosophy she had always lived by. She convinced herself that there was no such thing as a bad situation. In her mind, every situation that life presented had to be accepted as the best possible situation available at that moment. No matter how difficult things became, she believed she had to overcome them. She held tightly to the words of encouragement that Soo-jung had once given her and used them as a source of strength. However, despite her efforts, her struggles only seemed to multiply. One hardship led to another, and the burden continued growing heavier. Eventually, the pressure became overwhelming. Sion found herself sinking deeper and deeper into despair. The ideal version of herself that she had spent years chasing seemed impossibly far away. The confidence she once possessed began disappearing. For the first time, she genuinely believed that she might never be able to become the person she wanted to be. Then, after her accident, Soo-jung personally came to see her. During their meeting, Soo-jung carefully examined her condition and acknowledged that her injuries were quite serious. It was obvious that recovery would require a long period of time, and that returning to the academy would not happen anytime soon. Hearing this only reinforced Sion's doubts. She admitted that she did not believe she would ever be able to return. She felt that her journey had already come to an end. In response, Soo-jung shared a deeply personal story from her own life. She explained that she had become pregnant at 19 years old and had given birth when she was 20. Afterward, when she attempted to resume training, her body refused to cooperate with her. No matter how hard she tried, she could not perform the way she once had. During that period, she genuinely believed that she would never recover her former abilities. She thought that the best version of herself had been left behind forever. Yet as time passed, she discovered something unexpected. There was a certain enjoyment in becoming a challenger again. Rather than remaining at the top, she found satisfaction in slowly climbing upward step by step. She learned to appreciate the struggle of rebuilding herself from the ground up. After sharing that story, Soo-jung told Sion that she reminded her greatly of herself, and perhaps even more than her own daughter did. She admitted that she was curious to see whether Sion would be capable of making a comeback similar to her own. Because of that curiosity and because she genuinely cared about her, Soo-jung stated that she intended to keep Sion close and personally watch over her progress. Those words had an enormous impact on Sion. As she reflected upon them, she realized that Soo-jung had already done far more for her than anyone else ever had. She had arranged for Sion to eventually work as an instructor at the Soo-jung Judo Academy once she had fully recovered. More importantly, she had supported her during the most difficult period of her life. She covered her hospital expenses, helped pay her father's medical bills, supported her family's living expenses, and even provided assistance with housing. The amount of kindness and generosity she received was overwhelming. Since all of it came from the person she respected more than anyone else in the world, the effect on her was even greater. At that moment, Sion made a vow within her heart. She promised herself that she would do absolutely anything Soo-jung wanted from her. No matter what the request might be, she would fulfill it without hesitation. If necessary, she believed she could even sacrifice her own life for her sake. In Seon's mind, that level of devotion represented the ultimate expression of doing one's best. The journey toward regaining her former abilities was extremely painful. Every day was filled with exhausting rehabilitation, difficult training, frustration, and physical suffering. There were countless moments when giving up would have been easier, yet she never allowed herself to surrender to despair. Being able to train alongside Soo-jung and knowing that they had both experienced similar struggles gave her strength. The pain, hardship, and suffering that once seemed unbearable gradually began to fade away. In their place appeared hope, determination, and renewed purpose. Even after retiring from competition, Soo-jung continued to represent the very definition of excellence in Seon's eyes. Her movements remained sharp, efficient, and precise. Every action seemed carefully calculated to produce the best possible outcome. She appeared to embody everything that Seon had spent her entire life pursuing. At least, that was how things had always seemed in the past. Recently, however, Seon began noticing changes that disturbed her. Soo-jung's movements no longer appeared as perfect as they once had. She seemed to be making strange, unnecessary motions that served no practical purpose. At times, she appeared to act irrationally and make decisions that Seon could not understand. The more she observed her, the more confused she became. No matter how hard she tried to understand what was happening, she felt unable to recognize the woman she had admired for so many years. These feelings became even stronger whenever she saw Soo-jung spending time with Jin-kyu. Watching Soo-jung happily participate in endurance training sessions with him only increased her frustration. From Seon's perspective, Jin-kyu appeared weak, pathetic, and completely opposite to everything that represented excellence. In every conceivable way, he seemed like the exact opposite of being the best. As a result, Seon became convinced that there had to be some hidden explanation. She could not accept that someone like Soo-jung would genuinely enjoy being around someone like him. She began convincing herself that Jin-kyu must have used some kind of cheap trick or manipulation to get close to her. The more she watched them together, the stronger that belief became. Eventually, she concluded that Soo-jung was falling for him, and that she needed to be saved before it was too late. Seon became absolutely determined to protect her master from what she believed was a terrible mistake. However, before she could act on those feelings, she was completely restrained by Jin-kyu's 4 clones. Working together, they held her tightly and prevented her from moving toward him. Their grip was so firm that she could not break free no matter how much she struggled. While keeping her restrained, they informed her that they intended to make things even more difficult for her. They stated that she would not be able to move at all, and that they were about to show her something far more intense than anything she had experienced so far. Mockingly, they told her to sit back, watch carefully, and enjoy the situation unfolding before her. Afterward, the clones began conducting a photo shoot involving Jin-kyu and Soo-jung. Throughout the entire session, they deliberately positioned things so that Seon could witness every detail. Unable to escape and unable to look away, she was forced to watch everything happening right before her eyes as the situation continued to unfold. Jin-kyu eventually instructed his clones to continue conducting a full-body training session with Soo-jung. The training was designed to push the entire body to its limits, requiring constant movement and endurance. Upon witnessing this, Seon immediately objected. From her perspective, Soo-jung had already done more than enough, and there was no reason for her to continue enduring such an exhausting routine. Seon demanded that Jin-kyu stop the session immediately and prevent the clones from making Soo-jung work any harder. However, Jin-kyu calmly explained that stopping the training was not as simple as it sounded. He informed her that if the clones were not dealt with properly, their numbers would simply double the following day. Since he currently lacked a practical way to permanently store or manage all of them, allowing the situation to continue unchecked would only create an even larger problem in the future. In his view, the training was not something he could simply cancel whenever he wanted. Hearing this explanation did little to improve Seon's mood. Nevertheless, rather than continuing to argue, she proposed a different solution. Instead of forcing Soo-jung to carry the entire burden herself, Seon offered to personally participate in the wrestling session alongside the clones. Her true goal was not to help Jin-kyu, but rather to protect Soo-jung from having to shoulder all of the exhausting work alone. Once she joined the session, her competitive nature immediately took over. She began confronting the clones one after another, refusing to hold back and aggressively challenging them throughout the training. Every action she took was motivated by her desire to lessen the strain being placed upon the person she respected most. Later that night, after the long day had finally come to an end, Soo-jung found herself lying quietly on her bed. Her body was tired from everything she had gone through, and she was finally able to relax for a moment. While resting, she suddenly received a message from Jin-kyu. In the message, he explained that an urgent matter had unexpectedly come up and that he had been forced to leave immediately. After reading the message, Sujung could not help but feel puzzled. She reflected on the fact that he had disappeared in the middle of the shooting session without providing much explanation. Whatever situation had arisen must have been extremely important if it had forced him to leave so suddenly. At the same time, she found herself questioning the entire situation. Looking back on the day's events, she struggled to understand how she had become involved in so many unusual circumstances. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. Although she accepted that she had not really been given much of a choice, she still could not fully understand why she had ended up participating in all of it. Meanwhile, in another location, Jinkyu was facing a far less comfortable situation. Sion was interrogating him relentlessly and demanding that he reveal every detail regarding his abilities and the clones. She made it perfectly clear that she expected complete honesty and that she had no intention of tolerating lies or half-truths. Throughout the interrogation, she continuously pressured him to explain everything he knew. After listening to his explanations, Sion carefully began piecing together the information and analyzing it from every possible angle. From what Jinkyu revealed, Sion learned that both the summoning and storage functions of the clones operated within a relatively limited range. Their control mechanisms also appeared to suffer from similar restrictions. This information immediately caused Sion to begin developing a strategy. If the original body could somehow be isolated and kept in a secure location, then the 64 clones scattered throughout the academy would become significantly less effective and much easier to manage. She carefully considered what kind of location would be suitable for such an operation. In her mind, the ideal place needed to be secure, easy to monitor, and difficult for anyone to access without permission. She eventually concluded that her own location would likely be sufficient for the task. With proper surveillance and monitoring systems, she believed she could observe all of the stored clones while maintaining control over the situation. Whenever necessary, she could summon only the specific number she needed and deal with them individually rather than allowing them to operate freely. However, even as she formulated the plan, Sion quickly realized that simply containing the clones would not completely eliminate the threat. Binding them or restricting their movement could be accomplished relatively easily, but that alone would not guarantee safety. The clones remained dangerous simply because they existed. No matter how effective confinement might be, it failed to address the larger issue. As a result, Sion continued searching for a more permanent solution. Her thoughts rapidly moved from one possibility to another. She considered whether rendering the clones unconscious before storing them might be effective. Since time appeared to stop the moment a clone was stored, she theorized that summoning them again after a short period would result in them remaining in exactly the same condition they had been in before storage. If that theory proved correct, it could potentially allow her to neutralize them temporarily. However, after considering the risks involved, she decided that the approach was far from ideal. She continued exploring other possibilities. She reasoned that reducing the physical capabilities of the clones would significantly lower the threat they posed. If their mobility or effectiveness could be limited, then dealing with them would become considerably easier. Nevertheless, even those approaches failed to solve the underlying issue. The existence of new clones would eventually create the same problem all over again. No matter how many possibilities she examined, every solution seemed incomplete. Eventually, after exhausting countless scenarios inside her mind, Sion reluctantly accepted that there was no perfect answer available at the moment. Because of this, she informed Jinkyu that if he disliked her conclusions, then it was his responsibility to come up with something better. She firmly stated that discovering a reliable method capable of neutralizing both him and the clone problem was the only path that would allow him to safely survive the current situation. After presenting her reasoning, she demanded to know whether he had anything useful to contribute. In response, Jinkyu mentioned something that he believed could potentially help. He explained that there existed a special type of repeatable quest. According to him, if the quest was completed, another reward would be granted. There was a possibility that the reward could provide information, abilities, or tools capable of helping them solve their current predicament. Although he could not guarantee success, he believed it was worth attempting because they had very few alternatives available. Jinkyu then remarked that she was probably planning to deal with the matter immediately, adding that she had always been an extremely direct and decisive person. Before he could continue speaking, Sion quickly silenced him and resumed pressuring him. She was clearly irritated by some of the things he was suggesting and openly expressed disbelief regarding his proposal. To her, the idea sounded completely absurd. She questioned whether he had completely lost his mind for even suggesting such a thing. Eventually, after allowing him to continue explaining himself, Jinkyu insisted that the method he proposed was genuinely the only option currently available to them. Seon stared at him for a moment before admitting that he was undoubtedly one of the strangest men she had ever encountered. Despite that opinion, she also acknowledged that he did not appear to be lying. His behavior was strange, but his words seemed sincere. Because of that, she decided to grant him a single opportunity to prove himself. However, she warned him that if he intended to rely on a quest reward, then the reward had better be something genuinely useful. She then ordered him to stop wasting time and simply follow the instructions she was giving him. Afterward, Sion instructed him to continue carrying out everything involving Master Sujung, according to the plan they had discussed. At the same time, she openly admitted that the only reason he was still alive was because Sujung still had a use for him. If that were not the case, she would have eliminated him long ago. Unfortunately for her, circumstances forced her to tolerate his existence for the time being, regardless of how much she disliked it. Not long afterward, a status window suddenly appeared before them. Both of them immediately focused on the notification as it announced that the quest had been successfully completed. Seeing the message, Jinkyu quickly turned his attention toward the reward description. The reward appeared to be a unique single-use item with a particularly unusual effect. As he carefully read through the details, he discovered that the item possessed the ability to cause a body-switching effect. According to the description, the very first person who touched the item would end up switching bodies with its owner. The unusual nature of the reward immediately caught Sion's attention. Wanting to fully understand how it worked, she questioned Jinkyu further. After hearing the description, she directly asked whether the item's effect involved switching souls with the owner as part of the process. Her curiosity was obvious as she waited for him to explain the details of the reward more thoroughly. Sion's soul had been exchanged with Jinkyu's body, leaving both of them trapped in a situation neither of them wanted. Jinkyu, who was now occupying Sion's body, looked at her with a smug expression and told her that if she truly had a problem with what he was planning to do, then she was free to try and stop him. Sion immediately answered that she would do exactly that, and that she was not going to sit back and let him do whatever he wanted. Jinkyu simply laughed at her response and pointed out how ironic the situation was. He reminded her that she had been the one who tied herself up, and now she was completely unable to do anything about her circumstances. According to him, this was the perfect example of someone getting caught in their own trap. As he continued examining the information connected to her body, he commented that there seemed to be something strange about it. He mentioned that the status information claimed that her body could not experience any kind of satisfaction, which only made the entire situation seem even more bizarre to him. Seon, who was currently inside Jinkyu's body, looked as though she was moments away from attacking him. Her anger was becoming harder and harder to contain. However, Jinkyu appeared completely unconcerned. He calmly told her that she was welcome to hit him if that would make her feel better. After all, it was technically her own body that she would be hurting. He pointed out that every punch she threw would only damage the body she was trying so desperately to get back. According to him, there was absolutely nothing she could do that would improve her situation. The more he spoke, the more Sion's frustration continued to build. Noticing her reaction, Jinkyu remarked that she seemed far more excited than she was willing to admit. Sion immediately denied what he was saying. She insisted that she was not doing anything unusual and that she was perfectly capable of controlling herself. She refused to admit that anything was affecting her. Jinkyu responded by saying that she was only making things harder for herself by continuing to deny reality. He then explained that he had been reading the description displayed on the status window. According to the information shown there, the only way for Sion to recover her original body was for it to receive the full required amount of the high-protein shake. The explanation immediately caused Sion to come up with what she believed was a simple answer. She quickly declared that she already had an easy solution to the problem. Unfortunately for her, Jinkyu rejected the suggestion before she could even properly explain it. He informed her that there was already someone who enjoyed receiving the high-protein shake, and that he had no intention of carrying out any kind of training with her instead. After dismissing her proposal entirely, Jinkyu casually announced that he was planning to visit Sujung. The moment Seon heard that name, her frustration exploded. She declared that she would never allow such a thing to happen. In her anger, she stated that she would rather die than allow the master to see her in such a humiliating state. The thought alone was unbearable to her. Jinkyu listened to her outburst before casually asking whether she had any better solution. Seon responded by shouting at him that trash belonged with trash. She promised that she would find someone who was every bit as low, shameless, and disgraceful as he was. If she had to solve the problem herself, then she would do it her own way. Later that night, Sion went out while occupying the male body and began approaching random people on the street. She asked person after person whether they had any interest in modeling opportunities. Unfortunately, every attempt ended in failure. The people she approached showed little interest in listening to her. Some immediately rejected the offer and walked away without giving her a second glance. Others questioned her intentions and asked why she was approaching strangers in the middle of the street. A few people became suspicious and asked what kind of modeling work she was even talking about. Some assumed she was recruiting people for a strange photo shoot. Others pointed out that she did not seem professional at all. They noted that she had no business cards, no promotional materials, and nothing that would make her appear trustworthy. More than one person openly stated that she looked more like a scammer than someone involved in legitimate modeling work. Each rejection only made Sion more irritated, but she continued trying because she refused to give up. Meanwhile, Jinkyu, who was still occupying Sion's body, stood at the far end of the street, watching the repeated failures unfold one after another. After observing the situation for a while, he reminded her that he had already warned her this would happen. He told her that finding someone suitable was never going to be easy. According to him, this was simply how people treated losers. He suggested that they stop wasting time, call it a day, and return to Sujung instead. Seon immediately rejected the suggestion. She insisted that she was not going to give up so easily and continued looking around for another opportunity. During their conversation, her attention was suddenly drawn toward a young woman standing further down the street. The woman appeared to be engaged in a heated discussion with someone. Sion watched her carefully for a few moments before suggesting that they keep an eye on her. Jinkyu pointed out that if they continued doing that, they might end up spending the entire night watching a stranger. Even so, Sion argued that they did not have many options left. She admitted that following a random woman was probably not the most appropriate thing they could be doing, but she also pointed out that they currently had no better alternatives. As she continued observing the woman from a distance, Sion could not shake the feeling that the stranger looked familiar somehow. She felt as though she had seen her before, even though she could not immediately remember where. A short while later, the woman was heard speaking on the phone. She explained to the person on the other end that she had been busy giving advice to some friends, and that was why she had missed their earlier call. After ending the conversation, she walked into a nearby convenience store while still appearing preoccupied. Sion and Jinkyu quietly followed her inside, without drawing attention to themselves. Once inside the store, the woman casually selected several items and eventually made her way toward the checkout counter. However, before she could finish her purchase, the shopkeeper suddenly informed her that he wanted to inspect her bag. He explained that he suspected there might be unpaid merchandise inside it. The accusation immediately surprised the woman. She turned toward him and demanded to know whether he was accusing her of theft. She angrily suggested that he was only doing this because she had previously called him an old man. The shopkeeper calmly replied that she was free to inspect the contents of the bag herself if she wanted. As the situation became more heated, the woman loudly insisted that she had done absolutely nothing wrong. She pointed toward the security cameras and claimed that the footage would prove her innocence. She accused the shopkeeper of pretending otherwise and warned him not to play dumb. She threatened to contact the police and began accusing him of harassing and humiliating innocent people. She went so far as to claim that someone like him belonged in jail. Faced with her aggressive accusations and confident attitude, the shopkeeper quickly became nervous. He started apologizing and claimed that the entire situation had simply been a misunderstanding. The woman immediately realized that she had gained control of the situation. A smug smile appeared on her face as she remarked that she supposed she would have to be the bigger person and forgive him. However, she then demanded $100 as compensation for the emotional distress she claimed to have suffered. Feeling pressured and wanting the confrontation to end, the shopkeeper handed over the money. After receiving it, the woman left the convenience store looking extremely proud of herself. She appeared completely satisfied with the outcome and seemed convinced that she had successfully manipulated the situation in her favor. However, the moment she stepped outside, she found Sion and Jinkyu standing directly in her path. They informed her that they had recorded everything from the very beginning to the very end. They openly accused her of being both a thief and a blackmailer who deliberately targeted elderly people. They further pointed out that the crimes she had committed were serious and that the evidence against her was clearly visible on the recording. Finally, they suggested that perhaps all of them should head to the police station together and allow the authorities to review the footage themselves. The moment she heard those words, all of her confidence disappeared. The woman continued acting completely nonchalant despite being confronted. She offered a formal apology, but her tone made it obvious that she did not genuinely mean any of it. Sion immediately told her that if she was going to apologize, then she needed to do it properly. The woman reminded her that they had already said they would let the matter go if she recorded an apology video. Sion responded by saying that it was time for her to experience her own medicine and ordered her to get down on her knees while apologizing. To Sion's surprise, the woman agreed without much resistance. However, her attitude remained just as arrogant as before. She calmly stated that she would do whatever they asked, but only because she chose to. She added that if she decided not to cooperate, she wanted to see what they would actually do about it. She boldly told them that she was not afraid of them at all and encouraged them to report her to the police or post the evidence online if they wanted. According to her, nobody would believe anything posted by losers like them anyway. While speaking, the woman suddenly looked closely at Sion and realized she recognized her. She remarked that she had seen her before at a clothing store. The moment those words were spoken, Jinkyu, who was currently inside Sion's body, immediately became alert. He realized that his earlier feeling of familiarity had not been a coincidence after all. Before either of them could react, the woman suddenly slapped Sion hard across the face. She declared that the slap was payback for being insulted during their previous encounter. Afterward, she once again encouraged them to report her if they wanted to. According to her, the worst outcome would simply be paying a fine, which did not concern her in the slightest. Her behavior made it obvious that she was not the kind of person who would ever offer a sincere apology. If she had been capable of doing that, she would never have caused the problem in the first place. Their original plan of simply taking photographs of her as evidence had already failed, and the situation was becoming increasingly difficult to control. Sion immediately grabbed hold of the woman before she could leave. Watching everything unfold, Jinkyu began wondering whether Sion actually had some brilliant plan prepared. For a moment, he even considered that perhaps taking the photographs might still somehow solve the situation. The woman immediately started shouting at them. She warned them that the moment they finished photographing her, she would contact the police. She insisted that she had no intention of settling the matter peacefully and claimed that they would probably end up spending decades behind bars for harassing her. Despite her threats, Sion continued believing that once they completed the photo shoot, the woman's attitude and intentions would change. Convinced that this was the correct solution, Sion proceeded with the training session involving the woman, while Jinkyu took photographs of the entire process. Once the session was finished, they brought the woman back to the convenience store and instructed her to apologize to the elderly shopkeeper. This time, she reluctantly agreed. The older man accepted the apology and told her that everyone made mistakes. He simply hoped that she would become a better person from that point onward. After the apology was completed, the woman left the convenience store and encountered Sion and Jinkyu waiting outside. Her irritation was obvious. She angrily stated that she had never knelt before anyone in her entire life, yet she had been forced to do it twice in a single day. She swore that if they continued making her participate in ridiculous photo shoots like that, she would eventually kill them. Jinkyu responded by telling her that she clearly still did not understand what she had done wrong. He remarked that perhaps next time they should make her kneel in a public place with a large audience watching so she would finally understand the consequences of her actions. Before the argument could continue any further, a man suddenly approached from behind and grabbed Jinkyu's wrist. He immediately demanded to know who the two of them were and why they were standing with his girlfriend. The question caught both Sion and Jinkyu completely off guard. Meanwhile, the woman looked delighted to see him arrive. Jinkyu immediately noticed a serious problem. The man was gripping his bare wrist rather than his uniform, which meant the strength difference between them was overwhelming. No matter how hard he tried, he could not easily break free. The man then noticed the camera and grabbed it as well, demanding to know why they had been filming his girlfriend. Seeing this, Sion became extremely worried. The camera contained everything they had gathered and was the most important piece of evidence they possessed. Losing it would mean losing the leverage they had worked so hard to obtain. Jinkyu quickly realized that they could not allow the camera to remain in the man's hands. Thinking quickly, Jinkyu decided to imitate one of the martial arts techniques he had seen Sion use before. Using that technique, he launched an attack against the woman's boyfriend in an attempt to create an opportunity to escape. At the same time, several of the man's subordinates began moving toward them, making the situation even more dangerous. Realizing they were heavily outnumbered, Sion and Jinkyu immediately turned and ran. The group chased after them through the streets, forcing them to flee as quickly as possible. Fortunately, Jinkyu's clones appeared and helped create an opening that allowed them to escape. Thanks to that assistance, they successfully managed to lose their pursuers and hide at the far end of a nearby street. Once they finally had a moment to breathe, the status window appeared before them. Unfortunately, the news was terrible. The camera had been damaged during the confrontation. Jinkyu stared at the message in disbelief. The camera had been the final safety net in Sion's entire plan. If the woman, whose name was Rina, decided to report them, those photographs would have been their strongest defense. Now that evidence was gone, Jinkyu began panicking. He realized that if Rina truly reported them, the situation could become disastrous. They needed to find her before she reached the authorities and somehow convince her not to go through with it. The status window updated again. It displayed Rina's current objective, which was to head directly to the police station. The probability of her reporting the crime was displayed as 100%. Seeing that number caused Jinkyu even more concern. She was already on her way. Fortunately, another solution appeared within the status window. According to the information displayed, Rina's anger decreased very quickly whenever money was involved. If they could convince her that not reporting the crime would be more profitable than reporting it, there was a chance they could change her mind. As Rina continued walking toward the police station, an elderly man suddenly appeared and asked whether she was heading there. The unexpected question surprised her. The man then informed her that reporting the incident immediately would only earn her a small amount of money. However, if she waited, she might have an opportunity to receive a much larger reward. According to him, they were talking about real money. At the same time, the status window revealed additional information about Rina's personality. It explained that she strongly believed in fate, coincidences, and destiny. She trusted superstition more than logic. As a result, she found herself wondering whether the old man's words might actually be meaningful. Part of her began thinking that perhaps she could become rich if she chose not to report the incident immediately. Even so, she remained angry. She was not ready to completely forgive everything, simply because a stranger had made an unusual prediction. Just then, two of Jinkyu's clones, wearing hoodies, passed nearby while looking at their phones. They began discussing Sion's appearance. Hearing the conversation immediately caught Rina's attention. She was shocked when she realized that the woman they were talking about was the same person who had attacked her earlier. Rina began thinking about the situation more seriously. She realized that Sion was a public figure connected to someone well known. In her mind, that made the situation even more valuable. She concluded that reporting the incident could seriously damage Sion's reputation. Just as she was preparing to continue toward the station, she overheard another group of people talking among themselves. They were discussing how reporting celebrities was often pointless because it was usually more profitable to pressure them into paying money instead. As Rina listened, a new possibility began forming in her mind. She started thinking that repeatedly demanding money might be much more profitable than accepting a single payout through legal channels. The idea became increasingly attractive the longer she considered it. Eventually, the status window updated once again, showing that the probability of her reporting the crime had fallen to 42%. Meanwhile, Jinkyu had spread numerous clones throughout the area, all subtly creating situations that encouraged Rina to draw the same conclusion. Through a series of carefully arranged conversations and coincidences, they gradually pushed her toward abandoning the idea of reporting them entirely. Eventually, the status window updated one final time. The probability of reporting the crime had dropped all the way to 0%. At that point, Rina was no longer thinking about justice or revenge. Instead, she was thinking only about becoming rich. 9 hours later, Rina arrived at Sujung's Judo Academy. There, she finally met Sion face to face once again. Rina informed her that she had been able to find her because she was famous and closely associated with the national hero Sujung. Sion immediately responded by saying that Sujung had little to nothing to do with the incident. Rina disagreed. She pointed out that other people would not necessarily see things the same way. If word spread that one of Sujung's associates had been involved in criminal behavior, it could damage the image of the national hero herself. Rina casually remarked that she could even contact journalists immediately if she wanted. As she spoke, she raised her phone as though she intended to do exactly that. Sion quickly moved to stop her. Seeing Sion's reaction, Rina smirked. She pointed out that all of this was happening right in front of Sion's students. She sarcastically remarked that surely they would not want to stain the reputation associated with their national hero. Finally, Rina revealed her condition. She explained that she was the type of person who enjoyed getting even. Since everything had started with photographs being taken of her, she wanted payback in the exact same form. She claimed that her request should not be difficult to fulfill. All she wanted was for Sion to completely remove herself from the fabric in front of her and allow photographs to be taken. According to Rina, she only wanted a few photographs of Sion, and nothing more. The status window indicated that Sion had agreed to all of Rina's orders, as she had chosen to comply in order to protect something more important than her own life, which was Sujung's honor. In accordance with the given condition, Rina began taking photographs of her and, after completing the task, left the place. The status window then displayed that it would be best to maintain the current status for a certain period of time. Meanwhile, Rina was seated on a bus where Jinkyu was also present, wearing a cap. He was thinking that he still could not understand the reason behind the status window recommending actions that showed a 0% success rate. Shortly after, the status window once again appeared, urging him to unlock the domination path and suggesting another form of calorie-burning training, while also presenting a beginner-level basic item. In an instant, the item appeared in his hand, although he had no understanding of what it represented. The status window further indicated that a new day had arrived, and that a new clone had been generated. Later, Jinkyu went to Sujung carrying the item, which turned out to be a band-aid. The status window explained that the item could only be removed by the person who had applied it. Following this, he placed it on her arm, after which she attempted to remove it, but was unable to do so. He then told her that no matter how much she tried, she would not be able to take it off, although he could remove it instantly whenever he wished. He further instructed her to apply the band-aid on herself, explaining that once it was attached, he would still retain the ability to remove it regardless of the situation. After saying this, he applied it on her face, and other parts of her body, and then proceeded to begin a high-intensity training session with her. On the other side, Rina arrived at Sujung's judo academy and introduced herself to the other members of the club in a composed manner. Sion was also present there and questioned the reason for her visit. In response, Rina explained that she had come to learn judo directly from the legendary figure herself, the national hero and Master Sujung. Sujung was also present at the academy, and Rina addressed her by saying that ever since she had started claiming to train at her academy, people had begun treating her differently, as she could strongly feel the influence and weight of Sujung's name. She further stated that Sujung had maintained a flawless reputation without any scandals for many years, which must have required exceptional self-management skills, and expressed her intention to learn everything from her. At that moment, Sion took a picture of her resistance band and handed it over to Rina. Rina then commented that it might indeed be easy to protect a master's dignity in such a way, and added that she did not have enough money to return home, suggesting that she might even have to sell her phone to arrange travel expenses. Hearing this, Sion provided her with money. Jinkyu, who was secretly observing everything, thought that while watching Sion being blackmailed was somewhat entertaining, it would still be better to intervene before the situation escalated further in front of him. After receiving the money, Rina left the academy, but she was surprised to see cash scattered across the stairs. She began picking it up, assuming that some careless person must have dropped it. Shortly afterward, she noticed Jinkyu pretending to be asleep on a bench and told him not to sleep in public places, adding that she would charge him for staying there. She also took money from him, claiming that luck was clearly on her side that day. Continuing her actions, she further stole money from an old man who was passing by. Later, she discovered more cash inside the restroom and entered it driven by greed. While attempting to retrieve the money through a small bathroom window, she became stuck, with half of her body outside and the other half inside. She began screaming for help, but at that moment she sensed someone approaching from behind, and the situation quickly turned into a forced endurance training session involving Jinkyu's clones. They told her that since she had behaved so naturally while stealing money, she deserved to be disciplined and put in her place. Rina was extremely shocked, as she had not anticipated such a trap or situation. After this incident, Jinkyu began thinking about his next target and decided on Wuri Wu, since her affection status was also marked as friendly. He resolved to meet her the following day. Accordingly, both of them met at a park for a photoshoot session. During the shoot, Jinkyu noticed that she appeared even more nervous than during their first session, as she seemed embarrassed without the special camera. She then admitted that she was feeling very anxious, that her facial expressions felt strange, and that she believed she looked foolish because she was not suited to being a model. Jinkyu observed that her confidence, which had gradually been built up until now, was beginning to collapse, and he worried that she might fall into serious self-loathing again if she ended up quitting modeling. Because of this, he decided that he needed to find a way to restore her confidence. While they were talking, she showed him an anime character on her phone and mentioned that it was from her favorite anime, whose main character was named Koki. When he asked about the anime, she initially assumed he would find it boring, but he replied that it seemed like something he would enjoy. She then explained that the story revolved around a girl who was hated by everyone in the world due to having demon blood, which caused people to fear her and treat her like a monster. She also described how the captain of the village guards, who claimed to be protecting the honor of the village, constantly bullied Koki and blamed her whenever anything went wrong. Jinkyu responded that this behavior was clearly ridiculous and could be considered harassment, and she agreed while adding that Koki had done nothing wrong. She continued explaining that one day a large horde of strangers attacked the village, and everyone was on the verge of death. In that moment, Koki unknowingly unleashed the power of the demon within her, creating black flames that saved everyone. However, once the danger had passed and the master was gone, the captain of the guards manipulated everyone into believing that Koki was the cause of the attack. As a result, the villagers began chasing her and torturing her, without realizing that she had actually saved them. Unable to understand why she was being targeted, Koki ran away in complete shock. While narrating this part, she became emotional again and started crying, saying that this was the part that had deeply moved her. She then told him that he would probably not enjoy watching it because it was childish and might be a waste of time for him, but he insisted that he would still watch it. She was surprised by his response, and he proceeded to watch it with her. However, he did not actually like it and internally thought that it was absurd and uninteresting, but he continued pretending as if he was enjoying it. In his mind, he considered it immature and something only foolish people would enjoy, yet he maintained his expression of interest. Meanwhile, she worried that he would eventually realize she had forced him to watch something she liked and would think of her as pathetic. Feeling guilty, she held her phone tightly while he began pretending to cry in front of her and praised the anime, claiming that it was far better than expected and explaining details he had just seen, which ended up completely impressing her. After that, Jinkyu had changed his soul into another black man along the way, and then went to the house thinking that he would scare Sujung by changing his appearance. As he entered the house, Sujung immediately grabbed him, assuming that he was some kind of thief, and then she started beating him without hesitation. He kept insisting and saying that he was Jinkyu, and he also explained to her that all the strange monsters standing beside him were actually his clones. Sujung, still unconvinced and annoyed by their presence, asked him to remove all of those clones from her house immediately. After that situation, Jinkyu once again changed his appearance into a handsome man and looked at himself while thinking that he looked very good like this. However, Sujung looked at him with irritation and told him that even then he still looked gross and demanded that he stay away from her. Hearing this, Jinkyu started thinking that she might be feeling uncomfortable because she already knew it was him, and if that was truly the case, then he wondered what people who did not know his real identity would think about him. With these thoughts in mind, he left the house and went out for a jog. On the way, while jogging, he accidentally crashed into a lady, and that lady immediately started speaking to him in a soft and polite manner because he was looking very handsome. Seeing her reaction, Jinkyu began thinking that the response from people was definitely different now, and everyone around him seemed to be looking at him with completely changed expressions, almost as if they were admiring him. He concluded in his mind that living as an attractive guy was actually beneficial and might not be a bad idea at all. After that, he entered a coffee shop and started drinking coffee, where Ayun and her friend were also sitting nearby. Ayun's friend noticed him and pointed toward him, saying that the guy sitting in the corner was extremely attractive and looked like some kind of celebrity. However, Ayun did not agree with her friend and said that she did not see him that way. Jinkyu, overhearing this, thought that he had been expecting at least someone to call him attractive, and it turned out that it was indeed Ayun. He also kept thinking that he always considered her to be better than everyone else in the room, which frustrated him because she always seemed to look down on others. Because of this, he changed his appearance again into an intellectual-looking handsome man while thinking whether he still appeared unattractive to her or not. Once again, Ahyun's friend pointed at him and said that he looked attractive, but Ahyun still refused to agree. After that, Jinkyu changed his appearance into a cute younger guy, hoping for a different reaction, but even then Ahyun could not find him attractive and again referred to him as a thug. She also said that her standards were very high and she did not understand what kind of person she would ever call attractive. Ayun then clearly stated that she did not care how handsome a guy was, and that she was not interested in that kind of thing at all. Her friend responded by telling her that she was saying this now, but she might eventually meet a guy who would unexpectedly impress her and make her fall for him in just one moment, leading her into a relationship without realizing it. Ayun firmly rejected this idea and said that something like that would never happen in her life. Jinkyu, listening to their conversation, thought that if that was the case, then he could create a clone that Ahyun could not help but fall for, make her completely submit to it, and then have that clone coldly dump her. He thought to himself that it would be a perfect revenge plan, and that he would make her cry every single night because of it. The next day, Jinkyu again changed his appearance and went to Ayun, directly asking for her number while telling her that she was his type. However, Ayun replied that she was not interested and walked away without hesitation. Before she could completely leave, Jinkyu once again changed his appearance, but even then she continued to ignore him as if he did not exist. This made him extremely frustrated, and he told her to listen to him first and only then decide whether she wanted to accept him or not. He then grabbed her and insisted that she look at him properly, but Ayun immediately threw him to the ground with force. At that moment, Jinkyu thought that it might truly be impossible to make her interested in any man, as he had completely failed in this regard. As she was walking away, a young boy who was playing nearby suddenly dropped water on her, which surprised Jinkyu. He immediately assumed that she would not forgive the child, because he believed she was like a monster, and he felt that he needed to protect the child from her anger. However, to his surprise, he saw that she calmly began consoling the child and told him not to repeat that behavior. But the child did it again, and Jinkyu thought that she would definitely become angry now. Instead, she sighed and told the child that she had already warned him many times, but the child still did not listen and then ran away. Jinkyu then thought that he needed to help her in this situation. As she stopped for a moment, realizing she had also been splashed with water, she turned back and saw the child again, who suddenly hugged her leg. However, it was revealed that it was not actually the child but one of Jinkyu's clones, and then more clones appeared in the form of children and began multiplying around her. Seeing this, she became extremely frustrated as she was surrounded by many children-like clones, and they pinned her down to the ground, leaving her completely unable to move or do anything. Jinkyu had made each of his clones look slightly different from one another by adjusting their appearance carefully according to his intention. As part of the process, he first shrank their overall body proportions and refined their facial structure and features, removing everything that made them look like grown-up people. After completing this adjustment, his entire army of clones was finally ready. Aion, however, did not realize at all that all of those children were actually Jinkyu himself in disguise. At that moment, Jinkyu thought to himself that it was finally time for revenge, and all of his clones began teasing her and surrounding her, pushing her down emotionally and physically overwhelming her presence. He believed that she was now in serious trouble, while she tried her best to stop all the children around her. She kept telling them to go home, but they did not listen to her at all, and continued behaving stubbornly. Instead, they began messing with her clothes and hair, which made her extremely frustrated and embarrassed. She started shouting at them, but Jinkyu thought to himself that it felt like some kind of National Kids' Day or festival, because wherever she went, these tiny children were suddenly appearing everywhere around her, and she could not escape from them. He also thought that even if he wanted to yell at them properly, it would not make any difference, which made the situation even more annoying for her. Later, when she returned home, Jinkyu welcomed her calmly, but the children were still outside the door again, which made her even more frustrated. Seeing them there again, she immediately questioned Jinkyu, while he tried to act normal, and told her that those children were his cousins. However, she quickly replied that she knew all of his cousins, and did not understand why these particular children were always present around him. Jinkyu then explained that they were staying overnight with him. Frustrated, she started shouting and even called her mother to complain that he had brought a bunch of kids over without proper notice. But her mother dismissed it lightly, saying it was not a big deal, and that he could bring people over if he wanted, advising her not to overreact. After that, the call ended quickly, leaving Ahyeon more irritated. Aion then called Jinkyu into another room and strictly warned him to keep those children away from her, saying that if they came any closer, she would not hesitate to react strongly. Meanwhile, the children overheard her scolding and immediately started defending Jinkyu, telling her not to speak to him like that. They then began teasing her again, increasing her frustration even more. Jinkyu, watching the situation, sarcastically commented that it seemed like those children really wanted to play with her. Ahyeon, on the other hand, said that she could not even have peace in her own house and blamed everything on him, feeling completely overwhelmed. After that, she went to take a shower while continuously cursing him under her breath. After finishing her shower, she came into the TV lounge, but once again the children started teasing her, which made her anger rise even more. From a distance, Jinkyu watched her reaction and thought that his revenge had truly begun at that moment. The next morning, Ahyeon was sitting inside the car with her mother, Sujung, and she looked completely exhausted as she kept complaining to her about the children. She told her mother again and again to please save her from those kids, because, in her words, those children felt like the death of her peace and sanity. Sujung, however, did not take her seriously and laughed softly while brushing it off, saying that Ahyeon was being overly sensitive and that she was not trained enough to handle something as simple as being around energetic children without getting exhausted like this. Hearing her mother's casual response, Ahyeon immediately replied with frustration that being scolded by her own mother still felt much better than being forced to stay at home with those kids again. Even though she said it dramatically, she truly meant that the house situation had become unbearable for her. After some time, she reached the Sujung Jodu Training Center along with her mother, and as soon as she entered inside, she immediately noticed that those same children were already present there as well, moving around and causing noise. At that moment, she thought to herself that it was the time for elementary classes, and that these troublesome children were definitely going to be part of it again, and she mentally referred to them as evil kids while feeling uneasy. Because of that, she immediately turned to her mother and told her that she could not continue and wanted to go back home, but her mother firmly stopped her and said that she was not allowed to leave today under any condition because she had to take classes for every group. She also added that Sion was currently on leave, so Ahyeon would have to take responsibility and manage the classes for the day. Hearing this, Ahyeon got shocked and said that this situation was more serious than she thought, even questioning whether Seon should be hospitalized if she was unable to come, because she felt that taking such responsibility was too much for her. But her mother calmly responded that Seon was also a human being, and it was normal for anyone to take a day off, and she told Ahyeon to stop overthinking and simply focus on teaching the classes properly. Ahyeon then once again tried to explain that she was genuinely scared of those kids, and that yesterday had already felt like torture for her, but instead of understanding her, her mother started scolding her again and told her to stop making excuses and act responsibly. Left with no choice, Ahyeon finally went to take the kids' Jodu class, and as soon as she stood in front of them, she tried to assert authority by telling them to listen carefully and warning them that anyone who did not follow instructions would be taken away. adding strongly that her words were absolute law inside the classroom. However, the children did not react with fear at all. Instead, they immediately started shouting, laughing, and teasing her again as if her warning meant nothing. She repeatedly told them to follow the rules, but they completely ignored her and continued fighting with each other, running around and creating chaos, which drained her energy even more. She felt overwhelmed and thought to herself that she had already exhausted all her energy and that the level of energy these kids had was insane because they never seemed to get tired no matter how much they played, and on top of that, they all looked similar in her eyes, which made it even harder for her to keep track of them. While she was struggling with the situation, Worry entered the room and tried to calmly stop the children, speaking to them gently and trying to guide them in a peaceful way. But instead of listening, the children even ended up overpowering her and pinning her down on the ground. Seeing this, Ahyeon thought that Worry was extremely naive and innocent because she was not even raising her voice or punishing the children, but instead trying to handle them softly, and in that moment she genuinely felt that Worry was like an angel placed in the middle of all these chaotic and troublesome kids, and for the first time she felt a small sense of peace and relief, as if she had finally found something calm among all these so-called demon kids, which felt surprisingly healing for her. After the class eventually ended, the children were getting ready to leave, and Worry was also about to go home when Ahyeon suddenly stopped her and asked where she was going, also mentioning that she did not see her mother there to pick her up. Worry calmly replied that she was already 21 years old and not a child, which immediately shocked Ahyeon because she had assumed she was much younger. Ahyeon then reacted by saying that she was very cute and softly asked if she was going home alone. Worry replied that she was not going home but instead going for a photo shoot, explaining that it was nothing major and just a side hobby for her, even though she actually worked as a professional model. Hearing this, Ahyeon became curious and asked her to show some of her modeling pictures, and when Worry showed them to her, Ahyeon became genuinely impressed by all the photos. Noticing how naturally elegant and striking she looked in each of them,